A beautiful day in Elkhart Lake as some of the best drivers in all of the major series make their way back into the Indy cars for what should be an eventful race today for the top split for the European region for today's action. Good afternoon and welcome to RaceSpot TV's coverage of Round 8 of the 2020 Major Series season. Road America, one of the oldest tracks in all the United States, all set to host today's race. 14 turns, just around 4 miles is the circuit distance today, 6.4 kilometers for what should be a very interesting race. I'm Justin Prince, alongside me is Samuel Aurora with Arjuna Kantipani in the director's seat for today's action. Samuel, today's expected to be a really intriguing race. Road course racing for these drivers today, back in the Indy cars before the summer break.
Yes, indeed. The Major Series, of course, is one championship that has a whole lot of diversity. And now coming back to the USA with Road America, this is one circuit that I absolutely adore. The racing over here, a lot of it is going to be down to the strategy. And in the end, I'm pretty sure that these drivers are going to put up a very, very exciting show, that's for sure.
Indeed. This is the last time they'll touch the Indy cars before the season finale all the way in November. Let's take a look at how the point standings have been so far. Yolva Verde, the Indy 500 winner for the Major Series this year, is on top of the point standings with Eric Mickey in second, Ross Banfield, Kirk Crum, Joshua Wolf, Riley Thompson, Dawson Brock, Henry Bennett, Ty Kevin, and Marcus Niskanen round out the top 10. Very close, this championship battle this season, just separated by around 400 total points. The team standings also very tight. Grizzly TFR Pro, they've been working together all campaign. It's led to them being on top of the standings just prior to the summer break after today. 7,000 total points, followed by Bombshell Motorsports, Kinetic Europe, Total Downforce Racing Europe. Yellow Mission Motorsports round out the top 5 with Udox Motorsports Euro, Can-Am Racing, Elite West Racing Blue, the Grizzly TFR Wildcards, and the Apex rounding out the top 10. Overall, a very competitive championship so far, Samil, but today, expecting a very strategic and competitive filled race. 55 laps around Road America.
Oh yes, strategy over here is just so critical. It's the longest circuit, in fact, on the actual IndyCar calendar. So going for an overcut over here may mean going a bit too conservative in an approach. on the regular field, but it may not really make sense as too much time may be lost that way on the track. Strategies could primarily be undercutting the other driver or just responding to the others. The base strategy is around 13 laps, so that is going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on and to see how the drivers manage their tires and manage their fuel as well over here.
The charity represented for today's race is the Mile and Repair Foundation. Since 2004, they have funded basic research that has led to the publication of more than 120 peer-reviewed scientific articles, with the identification of more than 100 novel potential mile and repair treatment targets, and the discovery of multiple new research tools, such as animal models and assays that may help to accelerate research for all neurological diseases. For more information and to find a way to donate, go to mileandrepair.org. But these drivers just moments away from the starting grid. Samil, your expectations for today?
Well, my expectations are clearly on the field. Lots of drivers could crash out if they push too hard over here at Road America. It's a circuit where you need to be delicate and you need to be very, very smart in your approach. I think we're going to see a good amount of racing action in the first half of the race when the drivers are really vying for all the track position. But as the things go deeper down into this race, the focus will primarily be on how you manage your strategy and how you make sure that you get the best out of your pit stop. So I think it's going to be a very long one, and the best driver is not going to be the one who wins it on track, but the one who is the smartest in their approach.
Let's take a look who got track position in qualifying throughout the week. They had 1 week to set their best times, and Henry Bennett is on the pole today at Road America, one of the top drivers in this year's Indianapolis 500-mile race. Dallas Pataska starts in second, with Ross Banfield starting in P number 3. Del Verde starts in fourth, with Dawson Brock starting alongside Joshua Wolf in row 3. Row 4, Riley Thompson, Eric Mickey, with Ty Kevitz rounding out the top 10 with Marcus Niskanen for today's race, Emil.
Indeed, then we move on to Marcus Roma in P11 with Claude Belval starting this one in P12. And of course there's David H. Baker and Liam Sheen rounding off the top 14.
Kirk Crum in 15th spot, Travis Henderson in P16, Michael Hagstrom in 17th with Drew Hrabowski in P number 18, Ray Partridge up to 19th in qualifying, with 20th going to Darwin Mites. Cordell Cologne having to start deep in the field in 21st, Jock Show in 22nd, but John Lawn in 23rd, Isaac Snyder 24th, with Robertson and Lane starting alongside each other in 25th and 26th. Tom Drelling starts 27th with Kim Johansson in 28th, Mike Gott making his start in the pro split today, starts 29th. Devonstrel starts in 30th with Colin Martzoff, Andy Banfield, and a newcomer running a one-off today, Ola Senkvist, rounding up the 33 entries in today's race. Looking to be an entertaining one here at this racetrack. 14 total turns, very hot track temp for today's action, and one that could come down to fuel mileage. For those who watched the International Splits top race a couple days ago, average stints 12 to 14 laps a mil.
Yes, indeed. And what's going to happen is that now that the tire temperatures are a bit too hot, the drivers may end up struggling quite a bit with the grip. It's a circuit with a fairly few long corners. If you take a look at the carousel, it's a very, very long sweeping right-hand corner, and it's so easy to understeer out over there and lose a whole heap of time. So for these drivers, managing their tire temps to make sure that they're not too hot is also going to be critical to their success here today.
Michael Lane electing to start this race from the pits should note the 62 machine, everyone else on the grid. In your opinion, where are some of the action points for when this racing gets underway in about 3/4 of a pace lap?
Well, frankly, Road America is such a beautiful circuit that every single corner can be an action point. But trust me, initially it may be turn 1 when you're coming off from the 0.8 mile long straight, the longest on the IndyCar calendar. Then maybe turn 5 after the hurry down, after the rain sweep. That could be a major overtaking spot. That's where you can actually bully all the people out. The carousel, it may not be the best overtaking slot, so to say, but lots of people end up making mistakes over there. And personally, the Canada corner, after the long run on the backstretch, that is where you can make a move down the inside and make it stick. So yeah, plenty of overtaking opportunities. It's all about how you capitalize on them and make the best out of this race.
And a lot of drivers in the international race had mistakes and ended up having to go to the pit lane for various types of damage, including using their fast repair. What are some of those danger points, and how do you make sure you don't have trouble in the start of this race today?
Well, normally the approach would be to be a bit more conservative, but the thing is, at Road America over here, track position can be critical later on. Although you can jump the other person by strategy, you do want to make sure that you are up ahead of them in the early part of the race. So yeah, it's primarily being a bit more measured in your approach, trying to make sure that you're aggressive while not going overboard. And of course, just having the trust in the other drivers, because you never know, some people can come up and spoil the race for you. But hopefully, yeah, try to keep it as clean as possible from your end heading into the first 3 corners, because after that, it can level out and things can be a little bit more easy on the first lap.
In your opinion, who are the best drivers to watch for today, especially with many of the top drivers in Indianapolis inside the top 6 in qualifying?
Oh yeah, it's such a closely packed field. I think I'm going to go for the likes of Eric Mickey and Ross Banfield. These two guys, I've seen them in all the major series races and they have had quite a good record. If they can convert something here at Road America, it will pay off hugely for the championship challenge.
Henry Bennett, of course, strong on the long run as well in that respective race. You see him lining up in the 007 alongside Dallas Pataska on that first row for today's action. Only a few more corners to go. What are your keys to victory overall, Samil?
Strategy, conserve as well as possible, and make sure you're consistent in your approach. Over here at Road America, it feels beautiful to clock in a couple of good fast laps, and in the end, you can just struggle out in the strategy and not win this one. The key is to be consistent and to be good on the strategy, because that, in the end, is the holy grail of winning at Road America. Here we go, Justin.
Off the final corner comes the safety car. Again, Bennett in control of the field to start today's race. 33 drivers, 55 laps around Road America. Safety car now down the pit lane, up the hillside, down the Road America straight. Green flag is out, we're underway. And a clean launch for Henry Bennett off into turn 1. Many drivers trying to single file themselves out. First side by sides, about 7th on back.
Things are still going to be things are still rather clean over here on the first lap as such. Drivers, of course, being a little bit more conservative, but turn 5 is where things can actually happen. Down the Moraine Street, the drivers will be trying to look out for the draft over here. Some people may use their push to pass, but not everybody. Here they come, still single file. Are we going to see a move heading into turn 5?
One driver does take a peek to the inside. Not able, does indeed try and make the move. That is Banfield on the bottom side up to P4. Of note, Lane and Robertson also elected to start from the pit lane for this race. Hagstrom missed the start for this action so far. So the question's also going to come into mind. Early portion, yes, in this race. How hard do you push throughout these runs today to make sure you don't overexert the tires?
I think it just depends on your approach. Now, normally some drivers can actually go for a very, very quick first run and try and make sure that they maximize their tires and get some good track position exactly. But what can actually happen is later on in the race, you may struggle with that. You'll have to conserve quite a fair bit and you may end up losing a lot of time. Again, depends on your approach. Nothing here is right or wrong. It's all about how you can make it work correctly.
On board with Riley Thompson, this is in 7th spot. Coming out of Canada corner through Thunder Valley off to the Bill Mitchell bend following Dawson Brock. And the interesting thing about these battles too is not just the slipstream down some of the straightaways, but the ability to push to pass. That is something that is instituted on a lot of the road courses in IndyCar competition with these respective cars. Some drivers have the ability to use them to defend as well, Samil.
Indeed, it just acts as another strategic element. Drivers can use push to pass for a limited amount of time and make sure that they can either attack or defend from a person coming right behind them. And the way you manage it out is going to be so much fun and so critical to watch out for, because in the end, if you mismanage it, let's say if you use all of your push to passes early on in the race, and if you have somebody coming at the back of you towards the end, you could be at a major disadvantage. So your drivers not only need to be a bit more cautious, but a bit more conservative and a bit more, let's say, smart about their approach. Of course, you don't want to use it early on, as these guys may be trying to make a move over here, but you just don't want to end up having too much in the end that you can't even use out in the final laps.
A very good point indeed. Meanwhile, fights are on. Eric Mickey, Marcus Niskanen, Marcus Romner, Travis Henderson along that grouping. That's 9th on back. That's currently scrapping. Niskanen with a bit of snap off the corner, but everyone wanting to try and gain positions. By the way, the answer for the amount of push to passes for today, just 10 Samil as well. So that really emphasizes your point.
Absolutely, and this circuit is one of the longest ones on the IndyCar calendar. Approximately 6 kilometers. I think, yeah, back in India we use the kilometer system, but yeah, that's a fairly long one. So managing things out are going to be so essential. It's such a long race, and to make sure that you use it correctly is literally the be-all, end-all. I mean, if you miss out on that, you could be heading down.
Meanwhile, Mike Gaunt was a 22nd spot. He's now in 29th. This is why.
Oh boy, things just went wrong for him. I think he was a bit too aggressive in his approach. I think went on the grass and things went horribly wrong for Gaunt over there heading into turn 5. It's an easy corner to misplace. If you just get your entry or exit wrong, you could be losing such a huge amount of time. And it seemed like that is exactly what's happened. And as we see a cone going past, actually, that was a rather aggressive strategy over there by Henry Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett so far about a second or so ahead, but starting to lose that gap. Dallas Pataska is starting to reel him in a little bit. Had his fastest lap so far with 1:45 flat last time by. So the gap is dissipating now with the straightaway speed and the slipstream starting to factor in now for the 23.
Yeah, exactly. So Dallas Pataska just closing him in. I think a couple of laps ago it was around 1.5 seconds around the start, but now it's just fallen back to around a second, and that certainly is doable. If you clock in a few good laps over here, you can certainly reel him in and get the time done. The carousel is such an important corner for this one, though. It is where you can actually gain or lose so much of your time. As I say that, Marcus Romer seems to have an accident of sorts.
Yes, indeed. Now shuffle back to 19th. He was just in that grouping we're talking about in P11 last time by. Let's take a look what happened to the German simracing.de machine. And might have been similar corner situation. This time, though, on exit.
So what happens here in these Indy cars is you've got 700 horsepower within at the back of your car, and if you're not careful enough with your throttle movements, all of that can just come in and turn your car around, and especially in the early parts of the races when your tires are cold. Yeah, so that is one thing that you may be getting to see quite a lot in this race, Justin.
Of note, if you're a fan of Darwin Mites, he did lose part of his front wing in the early portion of the race. That will slow down the 72 machine after he started inside the top half of the field. Battle for 8th now on your screen. Ty Kevin wants this grouping trying to run away. Up by about 4 seconds. Eric Mickey working with his teammate Marcus Niskanen meanwhile.
Here he comes, Mickey to the inside. And goes on the inside rather well. So that's a smartly executed move here for P9, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, turn 1 is a place where you can actually get that done. You've got ample of room, and if you just get your approach correctly, moves can be made over here aplenty.
And that was the pass for 9th spot, as off and away goes Niskanen. In this type of a race, do you elect to stay in line and try and save a bit of fuel, or do you try and gain as many positions as you can before each and every stop?
I think initially I would like to gain as many positions as possible, because track position later on can be critical, as we see one of the drivers over there getting a major oversteer moment heading out of turn 5. But I think as the race progresses, you start to focus more on your consistent laps. You don't really want to battle as much, because then you could just end up losing a lot of time scrapping with another person. I would much rather do it at the start and then just try and gain time later on in the race. That would be my approach.
Indeed, Darwin Mites, Colin Martzoff, Trevor Bobrovsky now off cycle as they've all had to use faster pairs. Marcus Romner has also came down to the pit lane for an 8-second stop. So several drivers having to take service just about 3.5 laps into the race. And by the way, this grouping has already lost about 13 seconds to the leaders with all the battling.
My goodness, that is such a huge amount of time that they may not be able to be recovered later on. Wow, Eric Mickey now going completely at it. He's taking his elbows out. Mickey, in fact, at this moment is in P12, and Kurt Krum is the car right ahead of him. The gap only 0.3 of a second now, and heading to turn 1, something may happen.
He's lost 3 positions this lap alone. 146.912 last time by, majority of the field running the 145s. And you do have the ability to have different fuel mappings. There's a couple of them specifically for the road courses. Do you think Mickey's trying to save fuel and use a different mapping here based on the pace?
I mean, it certainly may be a strategy that pays off later on, but yeah, he's losing positions like a falling rock at this stage. It can be a bit tricky for him to gain that out later on. Of course, Although you want to conserve at one stage, you just don't want to be losing out a position so much. And as Arjuna has mentioned over here, fuel mappings may not be the most effective tool on road courses. The way to save fuel over here is going to be through lifting and coasting earlier in the corners to make sure that you're using as little fuel as possible while trying to go as fast as you possibly can.
So Mickey now shuffled out to 12. Up in the lead group, Ross Banfield has continued to follow the choo-choo train. Valverde, Pataska also within that slipstream train. Joshua Wolf, the car behind. So good rhythm for these drivers so far. Only about a tenth of a two of fall off so far in the first 4.5 laps.
Yeah, things are going nice and clean here for the lead battle. Everyone has just filed out single file right now, so things may just appear to be slightly uneventful as such, but later on, when the strategies start to culminate later in the race, I think it's going to be so much fun to watch. Trust me, on every single one of the IndyCar broadcasts I've done over here at Road America, things earlier on they just space out a little bit, but when we get to the middle part of the race, when the people actually start to swap their way around with the strategies and start to make sure that they are on one and the other ones are gambling around with the other things just culminate so well in the end, and there are so many wheel-to-wheel battles to watch out for. So right now, yeah, things may be slightly dull, but trust me, later on, they're just gonna light up.
Absolutely. About halfway or so through the fuel stint this time by. The 88 Brave Partridge, by the way, may about to have to use a fast repair because he had a crash going through turn 6 and turn 7 after having significant damage prior. No longer has a front nose. Was one of the drivers who started inside the top 20. So curious to see in this point, though, what we've seen so far from Henry Bennett. How this pace continues to hold up because he's currently the fastest driver out of the lead group.
He is indeed. The last time out, he clocked in a lap of around 145.093, which is quite respectable over here. And Dallas Pataska was around a tenth behind him, so things are going well for Henry Bennett at this stage. The gap, as you can see, around 1.3 seconds. That's a decent one. I think at this stage, Henry Bennett is just having the advantage of all the clean air. And Dallas Pataska also realizes maybe he can stay behind and make advantage of that as well, as something has happened, Justin. I think there's a crash for the 44.
Yes, indeed. Coming out of the Moraine sweep, Kim Johansson in the 44 machine for the third time this race had an incident for one of the drivers in this field, spun around coming off the corner and smacked the inside wall that time by. He's been shuffled back to the order as a result after being in the mid grouping at this point.
Yeah, things just going rather wrong for Kim Johansson at this stage. Ross Banfield now past the final corner, clipping the apex very well, and that is something that you must do because it's such a long straight. If I'm not mistaken, is that a battle going on for the lead over there? Because I see two cars going side by side.
No, that's lap traffic just up the road. Because many of the drivers we mentioned had to use fast repairs from early incidents. That's Colin Martzoff, the first driver who is now one lap down, having let by some of the leaders that time on the inside line. So this may help a little bit with a bit of the draft, but it did cost Henry some time, about 4 tenths to get by him.
Yeah, no, Dallas Pataska can reel him in using that. He's not exactly in the slipstream range as such, but maybe a good use of the push to pass and he can get a little bit closer as he has because the gap is now around 8 tenths of a second. Now these Indy cars are all about being smooth on your exits. If you just lose time over here, if you just break the rhythm, it's just like running Ramster. You just lose so much of time, and in the end, time is a luxury that we barely have in motorsport. Yeah, so for these guys, it's all about managing things as smoothly as possible, and for Henry Bennett, it's just about reinstating that gap that he had previously.
Dallas Pataska, by the way, with that checkup with Bennett, had his fastest lap of the 144.7 so far. Just shows the pace these drivers have been flying around. Next driver is about 20 car lengths up the road, would be Ray Partridge, who we talked about had no front nose after his respective crash. So the lead group now down to 2 drivers with this separation, by the way. Valverde has lost almost about 2 seconds to Pataska the past couple laps.
Well, where did that happen from? Well, Valverde, we all know him to be quite a fast driver. I mean, here in the major series, he has shown us plenty of instances where he has gone in ahead of all the other drivers and has put in miraculous performances. But here, I have a feeling that he's just conserving things up a little bit. He realizes that this one is a rather long game, so he can play it long later on and maybe just make sure of the clean air, as we now see Dallas Pataska clocking in an overall best lap time. That's purples for him all the way through.
Previous time was the purple lap. This time was the fastest out of the top 5 of the 145 flat. As these two try and work together here, the traffic now within range of Henry Bennett. Pataska also within range of the draft. So, based on what you've seen with Pataska, how do you play this if you are the 23 machine, based on the driving style we've seen and his strength when it comes to these Indy cars, as well as, in some cases, in the oval races?
Yeah, so it's a rather tricky one. On one side, as a racing driver, you just want to make sure that you showcase all of your pride, you gun for it, and get the overtake done. But for Pataska at this stage, staying inside that slipstream margin can help him conserve a whole lot of fuel on the straights. But again, when you come to the corners, this will just translate into a lot of dirty air, which can understeer him off and make him lose even more time. Oh, move being made here, is that? No, that's lap traffic, right?
Yes, indeed, and that really held up Bennett. Pataska now under half a second with that checkup. Still approaching the first pit stop window, mind you, so Pataska has a chance to fight for the first battle for the lead since the drop of the green flag.
Oh boy, things could get rather exciting over here. The gap only half a second now, and if Dallas Pataska gets something in, he could have a shot at that P1 rather quickly.
See if he takes the opportunity throughout these entire laps. There was a crash just moments ago between Cordell Cologne and Liam Sheen. That was going out through the hurry downs. Those drivers were inside the top 15 and trying to perform well. That was after Cologne ended up having a slide through the grass and collecting Sheen, sending him flipping and destroying his car.
Well, incidents like this can happen early on in the race as we see drivers trying to go a bit aggressive. Ideally, they shouldn't be because it's such a long race, as we now have a replay of the same. Coming through, oh boy, getting too hard on the oversteer. And the other driver just an innocent bystander of that. He had absolutely nowhere to go. Even if he had the reaction times of Flash, I think he wouldn't have been able to avoid that. Oof, major incident there.
And because of how Liam Sheen flipped around, that was going out of the racetrack, meaning immediately onto the tow truck. We'll lose him tons of time on the circuit, at least one lap at the very minimum, as a result.
And that is something that can hamper your race so much over here. I mean, normally when you go to an oval, one lap would be a bit shorter, but at Road America, 6 kilometers, that's no joke. Recovering that later on can be so tricky, and maybe, just maybe, he may need the help of a caution or something even bigger than that, but yeah, seems highly unlikely to get himself unlapped right now.
That's the thing when it comes to road courses on iRacing, that you end up not having the opportunity for a caution depending on the series, so you can't afford that luxury.
You can't indeed. And the margins for error here, of course, in the major series, as we have seen time and again with all these races, they're just so low. It just completely kills off your chances of getting a good run in the championship. Over here, we've got so many talented drivers who just capitalize on virtually every single opportunity that a mistake like that could be far costlier in the long run as well.
Indeed, a couple laps or so until the estimated pit stops. The working strategy in the international race was to split it to a 3-stop to make sure you can make it to the end on fuel and didn't have to go for a splash and go. Based on the math, that will be around that 13 to 14 lap mark, not around the 12 mark at the lower end of the spectrum.
Indeed, that is such a tricky thing to watch out for. Now, what people can do is actually go for the undercut and try to get a good lap on the fresh tyres. But remember, in these Indy cars, I don't think they have tyre blankets, do they? So getting a good outlap over there is far trickier in other series than in comparison to other series. So over here, just getting your tyres up to the right temperature as soon as possible is critical to make sure that you get a good outlap. And just maybe, due to this very reason, the undercut may not always work.
And one of the good things when it comes to the cockpit view, and you can kind of see this in the third box to the left, the push to passes drivers have left. As you can see in that yellow box, none of them have been used by Dallas Pataska throughout this race so far.
And if anything, that is such a smart approach by Dallas Pataska over there. He's made sure that he's in the clean air. He's made sure that he's able to conserve a whole lot of fuel while not being so out of touch from Henry Bennett as well, all while making sure that his push to pass is completely full. That, if I'm not wrong, is probably one of the smarter drives that Dallas Pataska will ever put in. And later on in this race, it's going to pay off a whole lot.
Moments ago, the battle for third position seemed to swap for spots. Ross Banfield was behind Valverde for much of this run, elected to send it up the inside line, going out of the Moraine sweep. and finished the pass off through turn number 6. So Ross Banfield up to P3.
Banfield here making a good charge. He's trying to get as many track positions as he can at this stage, and of course it can help him out later on as well. Of course he's fairly competitive in the overall championship, so for him it all makes a lot of sense to try and get as many cars as he possibly can. As now Henry Bennett has re-encountered lap traffic, and Justin, over here at Road America, that may not be as much as a problem in comparison to other tighter road courses, but when things can actually get off in the middle section over here, which is so tight, Bennett may end up losing such a huge amount of time, and Pataska can capitalize very easily.
Bennett, one of the top IndyCar drivers in the entire iRacing service. On iRacing and official racing, there are 2 different series. The Oval Series that focuses on the oval tracks, and Road Course Racing, which focuses on IndyCar and the road courses. Bennett set the fastest lap of the race with a 1:44.4, 3/10 quicker than anybody else in this race. And by the way, he was last season's IndyCar iRacing Series champion.
That is a lot of star quality right there in Henry Bennett. But the question is, can Dallas Pataska overthrow the odds and maybe get one up on Henry Bennett? He certainly has the pace to do that. He certainly has all the capabilities in the world to do that as well. We're only 1/5 of the way through right now, so there's still a lot of time to find out that answer. And soon, Justin, now that we've got a whole lot of green flag running, I see the strategy coming into picture. Maybe in the next couple of laps, you could see the likes of Pataska and Henry Bennett go for a run inside the pit lane. And that, in my opinion, would just throw things up in the air.
Keep in mind here too, we talked about push to passes. Already 2 of them have been used by Henry Bennett throughout this first stint so far. Riley Thompson, for comparison's sake, in the battle for 6th spot, then he's bowled away a little bit, has also used 2 of his. Dawson Brock, the car behind in that group, has not used any. So it's come down to many of these battles. Some of them have elected to bank them, like Banfield. He's let just the slipstream and the 4-on pace pull them forward, while others have been using those push to passes to try and fight and defend the pacing.
You know, I think it's a mixed approach in a way. You can actually use a push to passes early on because, as I previously mentioned over here at Road America, getting in a track position early on can be a bit important. But you just want to make sure that you don't keep up too little push to passes for the later half of the race, because if another person comes in and tries to make a run on you, you need that push to pass. You need to make sure you have enough of it to get something done. As we see the first car blinking on the routine runs, it's Claude Belval in the pits.
Well, he made to the start of lap 12 to open up the pit window. Keep in mind that several drivers are off cycle due to crashes. Romner was off cycle, Mites as well. Cologne, Postro, along with Fabrowski, Partridge, Sheen, and Martzoff are all on various different strategies. Here's that battle for 6th position just referring to. Brock is now in front of Riley Thompson after the pass.
And it seemed that Riley Thompson made a mistake of sorts. Here they come. Go heading towards Canada corner. This is a realistic chance for an overtake, but not this time out. Again, turn 1 seems to be the opportunity. Oh my goodness. Past the Bell Mitchell bend, they're getting rather close to each other. Nose to tail, Justin.
The reason for the pass in part was that curving on the outside of the Moraine Sweep exit in turn 5 has been something that's been a couple drivers. Thompson was able to save his car without it sliding, but had to sacrifice the position. Here's a look on the replay.
Turn 5 again, goes to the outside, tries to save it through. And you know what happens is when you get to one of those half spins that we didn't really have this time out is when you try to save your car from that spin, you try and brake in desperation. But what that can cause is a major flat spot. And that flat spot just chews off all the pace that your tire has. And it won't damage you right now, but in the long run, when you just keep on going on this particular tire, it'll keep on cutting out tenths after tenths after tenths of every single corner. And that can systematically wreck your entire race.
That's actually a really great point too, because when it comes to the iRacing tire model, if you heat up one of your tires, let alone any of your tires, it becomes very difficult to handle the race car. It's different in times from car to car basis, but it can really be a factor absolutely in the IndyCar.
Indeed, and with IndyCar as well, you just need to make sure you control so many different aspects. It's such a wide and diverse racing series with so many things to control. As we now take a look at the leaders, Justin, and they're spaced out as usual. I think 1.1 seconds the gap. Things seem to be going rather patiently over here, but I have a feeling they are coming into the pit lane rather soon.
Bennett did use a push to pass this lap to gain that extra time. Was only half a second distance the previous lap by the stripe. See if they come down or if they try and stretch the lap 14. Here comes Bennett on the corner exit. Here he comes up the road, America, straight to the pit lane. Our first scheduled pit stops. Pataska also following him in. Ross Banfield behind them, also going to dunk in this time.
Here they come in, the leaders. Let's see what approach they're going to carry out. The pit stop strategies, pit stop timings, in fact, can give a huge advantage, a huge idea about how things are going to pan out later on. And wow, Valverde just cycles into the lead, only temporarily, because he's still yet to make his first stop of the race. I think he's going to come out later on in this particular lap. And this means, Justin, this particular lap, his current lap, this one, he has to put in as fast as lap as he possibly can, or else he may not be able to jump the other guys.
Total Downforce Racing Europe, Machine Rally Thompson also staying out. Also keep in mind Ty Kevitt, Travis Henderson, Marcus Niskanen all also stayed out and cycling in front of the race leaders. Off and away goes Bennett. 9.7 seconds is the pit stop time. 9.7 as well for Pataska, 10.8 for Ross Banfield.
Perhaps Banfield is going for a bit more fuel in his car and trying to make this middle stint a bit more longer. Certainly can be done. If you try and eat up a bit more time, try and conserve over here, you can work it out later on in this race. And that 3-second pit stop difference between these guys, I think it's not too significant. There's still so much time left in the race that you can chew it down very easily later on. And now just keep your eyes on the timing screen, because while Valverde, he is clocking in his lap, he should be coming into the pit lane right now. He won't be able to cycle back up into the lead or second place. But my question is, how close will he be to the leaders? Is his outlap a good one?
It's going to be very crucial, especially since, mind you, here's a thought too. Say you exit with traffic around. The exit of the pit lane is right in the middle of the racing line, just about, for the apex of turn 1. So it can be very tricky to make sure you get out of the pit lane without holding anyone up.
Yeah, exactly. If drivers get that wrong, trust me, they're getting their entire race wrong. It's such a major mistake to make, and so many people can't get that done quite often. The leader is in Wow Valverde. The driver who we expected to come into the pit lane is right now on pit road. And guess what? Keep a close eye on the timing screens and also on the pictures, because these guys are going to cycle out ahead of Wow. But how closely will they cycle out? How close will Wow be at the end of this one?
Valverde, Thompson, Kevitt, Niskanen, Henderson all ducked down this time by. Zoom right by him as Valverde just got into the pit boxes just now. That's how fast the pace has been when it comes to Bennett and Pataska in the early going, to the point where some drivers haven't even taken their service yet. So Bennett, Pataska 1-2, Valverde, a 9.6 second pit stop meanwhile, just came out in P3. Banfield has been cycled out to P4, about 2 seconds behind.
Yes, indeed, and it just gives me a good idea that these guys are trying to make sure that they're having a longer middle stint. It's a good one. The racing will be a bit more calmer in this part, and using all the clean air, you can maybe conserve up a whole lot of fuel by lifting and coasting quite well. Brock and Riley Thompson at it once again. This is the battle heading towards turn 5 past the Moraine sweep.
Keep in mind, Thompson is on cold tires, and cold tires when it comes to the Dallara IR18 are very tricky, to say the very least. On the first lap, to say the least, you can't exactly push on them. If you push too hard, it's like you have an egg underneath the throttle. You hit that throttle too hard, you snap the back tires on cold tires.
Absolutely, 700 horsepower right behind of you, and on cold tires the tires just revolt and they say, you know what, I'm out of there, I'm not keeping any control of the car. It can be so hard to manage, and your throttling just needs to be immaculate. If you get it wrong, you know for a fact that the only place where a car is going to be is either in the grass or in the wall, and trust me, that's not where you want to be.
So to reset the top 5, Bennett, Pataska, Valverde, Banfield, Wolf of all cycling in those spots. Brock cycle back to 6, Thompson and Kevitt now your top 8, with Niskanen and Henderson rounding out the top 10 in the early going. 40 laps to go this time by, and more traffic could be a factor. That's a lap car up in front of the race leader. Pataska now within 0.2 of a second for the battle for the race lead.
Here he comes, heading into turn 1, trying to get something done around the outside. Is this an opportunity for him? Not quite. Bennett maintains the position still. It was Gaunt, I think, who was starting at the exit of the track. Right, they're trying to block off the leaders, but yeah, thankfully these guys are pretty safe. The gap now around 0.4 of a second. It can close up though, Justin, because the slipstream over here, along with the push to pass, it can propel Pataska into the lead.
That was Gaunt trying to move out of the way on the right side of the track, by the way, and Henderson's had to come down for an unscheduled pit stop. Having to take a second service, Eric Mickey also in that same grouping. That will lose them significant amount of time on the racetrack. The battle for the race lead still on. By the way, Pataska hasn't used a single push to pass in this race, despite that opportunity he just might have had.
Well, if anything, it just gives me a good idea that Pataska is one very patient man. Given the opportunity, he would still wait out and try to see what happens in later on in the race. So yeah, Pataska, well, find a man who's as patient as him. At this stage, normally, when you want to go for the lead, he can maybe, try and challenge Henrik Bennett and get the track position in, but he's waiting out. He's trying to play the long game over here, and he's just keeping all those push to passes for the final half, which I think is going to be so fun to watch because Bennett and Pataska, both on equal strategies. My goodness, this is going to be such a fun race to watch in the end.
Absolutely. Pataska losing about half a tenth coming out of the corner, exiting Canada corner back through the Bill Mitchell bend in this grouping. Again, they have pulled about 5+ seconds from Valverde. Valverde is about 2 seconds ahead of Ross Banfield. Then it is a big distance back to about P5. Joshua Wolf 14 seconds behind and one car off the track. That's Chuck Show having more trouble in the no-emission motorsports machine.
Guess what? It's turn 5 once again. Comes out past the Moraine sweep. Again on the braking. Things seems to be fine over here. Heading towards the curb. He gets a good line. But Justin, once again, as always, it's the exit. It's too much throttle on the exit. And we're seeing drivers getting so eager, so excited to get back off the corner in speed. It's not working well for anyone.
Despite that mistake, didn't lose a position. Actually gained a position that lap. It was 18th the previous lap in scoring. 39 laps to go in this action. Want to take the time real quickly to touch upon the Majors Garage. Brand new service that launched this season to help provide setups to fellow competitors as well as to fellow iRacers. Setups available include Baseline Plus, which are improvements on the baseline for a more comfortable, more stable version of the iRacing default setup. Driver-specific setups for experience with each car for $5 each, and Elite sets, the best of the best sets that may be more on edge, yes, but give you certified fast speed. For more information or to find a new setup, go to majorsgarage.com. Amongst those setups, by the way, include IndyCar machines for this week, as well as for tracks such as Richmond, Texas, along with Indianapolis.
And those setups can be so critical over here. Of course, when you try and get into an IndyCar series, a lot of it depends on your driving, for sure, but also a lot on how you set up the car. You can be the fastest driver in the world, but if your car isn't set up correctly, you will still end up losing time to the other person
look at this.
who has his car set up correctly. Oh, look at this action going on here, Justin.
Those are plenty of the drivers who had to use faster pairs that bunched up the leaders. Pataska looking to the left side of the racetrack. Will he try and take the lead? No, he doesn't. And he still didn't use the push to pass, even with that traffic.
How patient is he? I mean, he just could have jumped on the gun, pulled the trigger, and got P1 in the bag, but he still waits out. Is he going to use the push to pass over here is my question. It doesn't seem like it, judging from the past evidence, but he's getting ever so close to Justin. 3/10 the gap itself, and using that slipstream, he could get something done. Does he go for it? Does he have the patience this time? He does. He stays behind.
It almost looks like, Samil, he knows the big picture implications of using the push to passes early. I think he's trying to put the pressure on Bennett, it seems, because again, Bennett has 3 less push to passes right now compared to how he's been doing at lap 18 of this race. So if he's got more push to passes, Samil, and say Bennett runs out in the final laps, Pataska has a good shot of winning this race if he keeps within range.
That's a very, very good point over there, Justin. Things could just play out so much in the later half of this race. But for Bennett, the strategy right now seems to be attack is the best form of defense. He's just attacking the curbs, attacking the lap times, and you making full use of the push to pass. But it seems like it that he's not able to get the best out of it. The gap has fallen down to 0.3 of a second.
Battle is on again for P10. Johansson trying to make a move. Remember, had a mistake early on in his no-emission motorsports machine. But within the slipstream, he's used 3 push-to-passes this race. Mickey hasn't used a single one so far in the Bombshell Motorsports machine. And when you think about Bombshell Motorsports, they were very strong as an entire unit at Indianapolis earlier this season.
They were indeed, and the Bombshell Motorsport cars doing a very, very good job in this championship. Second, if I haven't got my stats wrong, and that's a good position to be in right now. Here comes Kim to the inside. It's going to be the outside for this first left-hand kick, but he's going to have the inside line for this one. And gets it done. Nice and clean, Justin.
And off and
Oh!
away, just after using the push to pass to take the spot, he'll lose a few back with the spin. Wow.
Oh boy, went in a bit too hot for that one. Once again, drivers are getting so eager to get that move done. And for Kim, it just seemed like he was so happy, so elated to get it done. Went down the inside, all nice and clean over here. But not here. Gets on the throttle once again, Justin. Too early. And it's just becoming so symbolic. I mean, every single driver may end up doing the same by the end of this race at this rate.
Crazy thing is, despite the mistakes, he's one of the biggest movers of the race. Plus 15.
Oh,
We also
boy.
have a plus 15 for the 13 machine, who is running that one off, and Oa Sarkfirst, who is up to about P18 on the track this lap. Here's a look on the board.
Yeah, Bennett in the lead once again, not really changing any positions, but Kim Johansson, regardless of that mistake, as you rightly mentioned, Justin, 15 positions. That is no joke. And the other big movers, well, we've got Banfield moving up 11 positions as well. He started from the back of the grid. And look at the big losers. Ackstrom, 16 positions. Sheen, 12 positions. Getting those up later on in the race is going to be so tricky, trust me. It's not a track where you can close up the gap so easily. And making up 16 lost positions, oof, that's going to be a Herculean task, that.
And remember, Hagstrom missed the start of the race, had technical issues. He's 3 laps down at the moment. So tough sledding for the number 11 machine who made it into today's race from the Legends division. Still, though, approaching pit stops about halfway in this stint. Let's take a look at the top 8 overview for the time being. It's Bennett, Pataska, Valverde, Banfield, Wolf, Rock, Thompson, and Kevith in that top 8. And already a bit of nerve-wracking moments, including the 24 having trouble for Henderson.
What was that? Travis Henderson. I think he just got on the power so incorrectly that he just swerved off from one corner of the track completely to the other one. I have never seen something quite like that. You try and see that on the exit of turn 2, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I don't really count this small kink as a turn. But here he comes. Well, just take a look at this one. He's all going fine right now, but he just gets so wild on the power, on the grass, swoops on to the outside and crosses paths. Thankfully, didn't hit anyone, Justin.
Yeah, very lucky indeed. Does lose him a lap, however. He was scored 23rd last time by with the spin. Falls behind Michael Lane for that category. In terms of Bennett, very calm sledding still. Has not used a push to pass this entire stint. Interesting point as well for Valverde. Did use one push to pass. He's trying to close up the gap 4 seconds behind. That's also with Ross Banfield on a different pit strategy. Closing in now for Tet's last lap in the battle for 4th. May start to break out, should stay for 3rd.
Things are just closing up a little bit. On the picture, at least, it seems that they're nice and well single file. But things will get fairly acrimonious rather quickly over here. Joshua Wolf in P5, he's on the charge. Not too far off over there, the interval gap as well. He could be coming in to make a move, heading into turn 1 on Ross Banfield.
Yes, indeed, you're looking at a battle on the screen. That is lap traffic a bit. Checking up Wolf and Brock that time by as lap car moves to the left side of the racetrack. Those are teammates working together, by the way. With Wolf and Brock, they've also been able to separate just a little bit with the help of the traffic from Riley Thompson.
Here they come. Wolf is still nice and easy in P5 right now. The interval gap between himself and Ross Banfield, well, 6.923 seconds. That's a lot of time to gain up. Yeah, these two guys are working in tandem, it seems, at this moment. And Justin, it's all settling in right here.
Indeed, there are 2 seconds, by the way, covering Ps 5 through 7 on the racetrack at the moment, separated by about half a second to a second or so amongst these drivers, but they've been able to stick together for the most part throughout this entire stint.
Yeah, thankfully they're not crashing into each other. That's the major point. At this stage of the race, drivers do tend to go into a tunnel vision of sorts, where they're just focusing so much on the consistency, and they do end up making a mistake of sorts, like a jinx kind of thing. Thankfully, they're not doing that right now. All the drivers are nice and clean and very considerate of each other, and this is the part that defines the race. Now, the thing is, Although on one side, Justin, you want to be as close as possible on the straight line in comparison to the car next to you, because of course you can even get track position while conserving as well. As we see Niskanen, I think, making move, falling down a position, that is. Yeah, I think Niskanen making a move up into P8. So I'll
Yes,
just
he
get
did.
back to my point. What happens is you can close in and get on the slipstream and save as much fuel as possible under the draft, but again, dirty air, that's the thing. When you get into dirty air, you just understeer so much and lose so much time and burn up extra fuel as well. So for these guys, it's a precarious position to be in right now. Back to you.
So at this point, say you're in that dirty air in a corner, because mind you, it can affect you as close to about a second or two in some of these corners. What do you do as a driver to try and counteract that and try and make sure you don't lose time when you're dealing with that dirty air in the middle of the apex?
Uh, it's a rather tricky question. It's something that not a lot of people have been able to answer out in racing, and certainly I may not be able to do so as well. The best you can hope for, perhaps, to close back a little bit on the corners, just coast a little bit towards the approach, so let the other car go past, and you maybe don't have the effect of, you don't have the similar effect entering into the corners. Or perhaps, if you possibly can, I know it may be a bit tough, in certain corners, you can just use a different line perhaps. You know, the cars punch up a whole lot of air for the other cars right behind them. So if you just try to use a different line, which you can in certain corners like the carousel, it can help you avoid the dirty air. Or the best thing, just fall back a little bit. If this battle is so bunched up to each other, just falling back a 10 to 2 will not really have the biggest of impacts immediately. Not even in the long run, because then you can close on in later on. And that is exactly what Riley Thompson seems to be doing at this stage in P7, that is, yes.
Checking back up with the leaders, Pataska still within the draft, still about 4 laps or so from their estimated pit window, with 33 laps to go. And again, Bennett has been continuously trying to break that slipstream because he knows, again, Pataska's been just falling on behind it, letting it pull him, and trying to also just use that as his way to keep up instead of having to compensate with the push to pass, and also trying to make sure he doesn't get that straight line boost speed by being able to follow tire for tire.
Indeed, that's a very, very good point that you mentioned over there, Justin. Pataska right now, well, it's quite clear that he's playing the long game. He's trying to wait things out and trying to see what's what. And he hasn't even used a single point of push to pass still. I wonder how closely he'll be able to follow this on later on without having the urge of using a push to pass take over him. If anything, he's one very patient man. And Justin, it just gives me a good idea. If Pataska is able to stay so close to Henry Bennett at this stage without using the push to pass, which Bennett has, it just gives me a good indicator that Pataska has the natural raw pace, which he will be able to exploit later on, along with the push to pass, that is.
By the way, Claude Beauval has pit this time by. That is only an 11 lap stint. He was up to his highest 12th position in the 56 machine, so pit window has opened for some of the teams. Earliest stint we've seen and the shortest stint, by the way, Samil, when it comes to that 56. Comes the question for some of the teams then, how are their stints going to stack out, because some of those drivers have been running on their own as well?
Yeah, the problem that actually causes is that they're now off the cycle, so they're not really in line with all the other drivers. Now, eventually, there are two ways of looking at this one. You can either say, okay, I'm off cycle, yeah, my race is entirely ruined, or you can look at it from the opportunistic point of view and try to do something different that you normally wouldn't have been able to. Say, for instance, going on rather quick hot laps of sorts, trying to cut down your stint and trying to make sure that you're much faster than all the other cars. That can be one approach. The other approach can be going far longer than anyone else, extending your laps, in fact, to around 14 or 15 laps if you possibly can. So you have multiple options, multiple choices that you can make use of in the end by not staying on the base strategy as well. So yeah, it can be an opportunity in disguise, this.
I want to go back to that grouping you see in the backdrop. That's P3 and P4. Banfield hit 1 lap earlier than Valverde. Say you're in this grouping too. If you're Valverde and you know Banfield has to pit a bit earlier before you, do you let him on by, or do you try and fight this to try and think about where they're going to cycle into the pit stops?
This is a tricky one. Now, because Banfield will be heading into the pit lane early, what he'll have to do is clock out a stellar outlap, and that will be Valverde's last lap on this set of tyres. So, yeah, I think eventually it'll be nullified because Banfield will be on the colder tyres and Valverde on the older one. So, in the end, I don't think the difference will be quite big between these guys. So, Valverde at this stage, I think he should keep doing what he's doing. That gap, he shouldn't take it for granted, knowing that Banfield will be pitting in earlier. It still is a very vulnerable place to be in, and you still need to maximize maximize their positions at this stage. So yeah, you can't take anything for granted. So for Valverde, my piece of advice, I mean, of course, he's not listening at this stage. It just would be to keep on doing what he's doing, because that has put him up to P3, and that, in fact, is quite a good place to be in.
His namesake, Andy Banfield, by the way, just became a factor in the battle for the lead, but Tasca lost about half a second trying to clear by lap traffic. Banfield just up the road now from this battle for third position. So again, traffic about to play into a factor because they are lapping their way just before the pit stops for many drivers up to as high as about 19th and 20th position this run.
Indeed. Now, thankfully, traffic isn't as much of a factor at Road America in comparison to other more tighter tracks. But again, in certain places, let's say heading down towards the approach to turn 1, where things do narrow up quite a bit, you don't really want to face the traffic over there, or even in the middle sector towards the hurry downs and all that, because you have a couple of 90-degree corners here and there. And if you approach some traffic at that particular point, trust me, you're about to lose time so as quickly as a drunk gambler in Las Vegas. You're just not going to get it back.
Yeah, that's the way to end up not having a good night, to say the very least. Let's put it that way. As we get towards lap 26, the start of that lap this time by should begin the opening for some drivers. Based on the stints, they can stretch it to about 27, 28 laps into today's event for these second pit stops, some of these cars, based on how they've been able to play the stint.
If they can actually do that, it may help them out quite a bit in the pit stops, because now that they've used less fuel in comparison to the others, now that they've been able to last things out far more, maybe later on in the race they can go for a shorter pit stop because they don't need to take on as much fuel or tires as early. So that can play out later on in the race. Not now, certainly, but you will see all these things culminating towards the end. Let's say when we get to around lap 40 or lap 45, something like that. At this stage, once again, we're approaching lap 25, 26, so you may see drivers coming in right about in the next couple of laps. But if you can take it up to around lap 27, that can pay dividends later on in the race.
And that'll just be around the halfway point of this event. Lead is closed back up because on the straightaway down the kettle bottoms, Henry Bennett pulled up to 1.4 seconds. Then he got to the corner exit of turn 14 when Tom Drelling, that lap traffic, moved to the right side of the racetrack. Problem? Once they got side by side, he tried to make the move on the high line of that corner exit. All the time that Bennett had gained with the slipstream off some of the traffic went for naught trying to pass by him.
Oh boy, that's just a perfect guide of losing time in an instance right there here at Road America. You just need to avoid things like this to try and be a bit more considerate and a bit more conservative with your approach as well. Bennett right now with a stint of around 12 laps, so things are going nice and well for him, but he will be very aware of the challenge that Dallas Patasca poses right behind him. Of course, Bennett at this stage has the fastest lap of this race at around 144.4, 110, but they're lapping far slower than that at this stage. They're going around the mid 146s. That was the last one for Bennett, and Patasca went in for a mid 145. So yeah, things are closing up between these guys, and all the time that Bennett had gained was lost in an instant.
Instant time approaching 3 p.m. Tires also happen to deal with the highest track temps of the day, 113 degrees Fahrenheit for reference sake. Very high Celsius to say the very least. But as you've seen moments ago in the graphic, they're on lap 12 of the stint. Approaching lap 13 now. Will they come down? No. Bennett stretching out one more lap, so is Dallas Patasca.
You'll notice that towards the end of these races, these guys will be on identical strategies. Now what this does is, it just kind of settles things down a bit too much. Of course, neither of these guys seems to be going for a gamble as yet, but you may see that happening later on in this race, as the 777 is also in the pit lane. That's Ross Banfield.
He was the only driver inside the top 5 to duck down to the pit lane and went for the 13-lap stint. That will mean, based on the math, could be close for the end of the race. We'll need to stretch it to lap 14 and then be tight on the fuel for the checker flag lap.
And towards the end, Ross Banfield may be driving so much slower in comparison to all the other cars, because heading into every single corner, he will have to lift and coast and lift and coast. And it can be a bit frustrating as a driver, because at a circuit like Road America, which just tempts you to drive faster, lifting and coasting can make you feel so dull and so bored right now. But again, thankfully, Road America being the circuit that it is so much fun to drive regardless of whether you're lifting or regardless of whether you're attacking as well. It personally is one of my favorite tracks, and regardless of however you drive over here, whatever approach you take, it will still leave you with a big smile at the end of the day. And for all these drivers, well, that can be just made an even bigger smile if the results go their way.
It makes sense, actually, when thinking about it here, Samil, actually, why they stretch the extra lap, because this is 28 to go this time, halfway point of the race. They can only go 14 laps, the most we talked about. They can go at 14 laps to go, then just be at the edge of making it on fuel at the checker flag.
Indeed, and you can't go any further on unless you're a proper miser for fuel, as we now see both the leading cars diving down into the pit lane. This, Justin, is a tricky part of the race. Do they go for split strategies over here? That should be fun to watch.
And this may play a bit into Valverde in terms of fuel strategy, because remember, he went lap 14 for his first pit stop. He stayed on the racetrack. The top two elected to come down. You see the various different cars. Ross Banfield is that 777. You see at the very inner side of the racetrack. This is the top four on the track map.
Quite fast spread out at this stage. Leaders are in the pits once again. Now let's see, take a keen eye on their timing screens. Now, the timing for each of their stops will play a major difference. It'll just tell you what strategy they're going for. Bennett is down, and so is Pataska. Once again, seems to be identical pit stops for both of them.
9.9 to 9.7 seconds is pit stop times for the two drivers. Bennett the quicker of the two. Pataska losing a little bit of ground off the stops, but it's been very good so far. Has not used a single push to pass in this race. At the halfway point of this event. And the interesting thing here now with this decision is for Valverde and Thompson, because they went to lap 14 in the first run, they won't have to panic about that lift and coast for the end of the fuel stints at the end of the race. They'll have 13 laps of fuel just to put in for their final stop.
You know, and this can just make sure that in the last stint they can push a little bit more in comparison to all the other drivers. So yeah, it can pay off. But the thing is, they should make sure that they're not losing too much time right now as well, because even though you're trying to go for a good run in the final one, even if you push as hard as you possibly can and use all your push to pass, if the gap is a bit too much for you to close down, it won't make a difference. It would simply mean that a strategy has backfired on you because you can't make the best of your last stint. And now Valverde, rightfully so, dives down into pit road, and now let's see where he cycles back out.
So him, Thompson, Niskanen, and Kevith all amongst that strategy. By the way, 45 degrees Celsius is that track temp you've seen. Here's the top four once again. And already, about 19 seconds or so separated Valverde and Thompson. Only 33 seconds separated Valverde to Bennett and Pataska. The pit delta, 40 seconds today, as they're already making their way down the Road America straight.
And it's a particularly long straight, this one. 0.8 miles to be precise. And I think it's the longest on the road course calendar for all of Indy cars, and it's a fairly long one. And if you want to make a good move heading into turn one and maximize your lap time over here, you just need to get a fantastic exit off the final corner. Again, just making full use of all the you know, there's a bit of tarmac towards the exit. If you can get your exit nice and wide over there, you can get a good run heading into turn one. Valverde now approaching towards turn 5. He cycled back into P3 once again. And the gap between him and Banfield, Justin, 3.5 seconds. That is a good amount for him. And Valverde, from the looks of things, has ample of clean air, so he can grow that gap even further.
Has only used 2 push to passes, and the overcut absolutely worked. And this kind of goes also towards the discussion now I want to bring up, and I think you want to bring up as well, how the setups go for these respective cars and how they place them for these respective races, say on the road course. Where, in your opinion, do you, as a setup builder, lean your setup towards in terms of how you want the car to handle downforce-wise, speed in the straightaways, etc.?
Well, frankly, I'm as good as building up setups as a dog in a race car, to be very honest with you. But there are a few things to watch out for in the end, because at Road America, you have to compromise on something or the other. It's a track with a mix of both fast corners and long straights as well. So for the fast corners like this one, the Carousel, which is a fantastic corner, unlike many other corners in World Motorsport, you have to make sure that you have enough amount of downforce. Otherwise, your cars will just understeer past, and you will lose such a big amount of time on the track that you will not be able to catch up. That said, just like this particular back straight that we're having over here on the approach to Canada Corner, there are multiple long straights on this circuit where all the downforce can just create extra drag, which may slow you down. So all the factors need to be kept in mind. And in the end, frankly, there's nothing right or wrong as such, but it's just about finding the right balance, the right compromise that suits your driving style, and make sure that you're still quite fast as well. Over here for the 0.8 mile long straight, the low downforce package, the low drag setup may come in handy.
Seeing some traffic factoring in that battle. Dawson Brock in P6, Riley Thompson P7. Up the road is Joshua Wolf in this grouping, and just about smacked Travis Henderson as he came out of the pit lane.
Oh boy, they're getting rather naughty over here, aren't they, Justin?
Yeah, Travis Henderson was that driver staying on the right side of the racetrack just outside the racing line because he just came out of the pit lane. That could have been a disaster if he was about a couple feet forward.
Oh yes, and again the margins for error over here are so low that a few feet can have a major impact not only on this race but on the overall championship picture as well. It's a championship with a lot of close contenders, lots of talented drivers, and going in you want to make sure that you're able to maximize the points from every single race, because you know for a fact that all the other drivers, they're relentless. They won't let go of it in any of these races. And you from your end just need to get the best out of every single one of these ones. And those sort of incidents, well, they just put you on the very fringes.
Now to get back towards the setups too, and this is a question I think some of the viewers may have as well, as how the gearing is set up. You do have the option, depending on some of the racetracks, to adjust a bit of the gearing specific for each gear, and they have estimated timings in terms of speed as well as the final drive. How do you plan that gearing as the 21 of Mike Gahn has had more problems?
Here comes Gahn after turn 5, past the bridge, past the uphill corner. This one, it's a nice and easy corner. It gets on the exit. And again, Justin, how many times has it been? What, 6, 7, 8 times that we've seen drivers heading on the exit, getting a bit too eager, and going into the grass. Oof.
So a rough day for Gaunt. He's been now shot for the P28. As a result, with that damage, currently Gaunt at this point of the race is still one lap down. But these two, what's the saying, I think, in this grouping? That they've always stayed together, never letting each other go. What's the best way of putting that, Samil? A racing love story. Maybe the best way of putting it. I don't know.
Well, it's not exactly a rom-com of sorts, because there's barely anything to laugh about in this one. But yeah, these guys are fairly romantic to each other. They're just not letting go of each other. And hopefully it doesn't end up like a Titanic love story with one of them just pulling away from the other one, and the other driver just sitting back in the cold, in the wilderness, wondering about what could have been. Yeah, the battle is heating up at this stage. It has been far closer in this race so far, for sure. But I have a feeling that later on, when Pataska closes in and tries to use all of his push to pass, that is when things will get really exciting, with all the drivers getting their elbows out and the battle for the lead becoming ever so close.
Joshua Wolf had the opposite of an exciting moment, a nerve-wracking moment. After he went off the racetrack in turn 6, got shuffled from P5 to P7, because went way high in the racing line and missed the zone, missed the whole corner.
Wolf becoming the world's fastest lawnmower right there. It's an easy thing to do, but what's surprising is the fact that he didn't lose control of it. So that was a good sign that Wolf was easy on the throttle when he went wide, because when you go wide over there, the grass is relentless. It's so slippery that when you just even put half throttle or something like that, your car just runs out of control, especially with these super oversteer Indy cars. So good for Wolf, he didn't really lose a lot of time in the grass there.
Indeed, as Pataska and Bennett separated by about 1.2 seconds out to the front of the field. And now it gets curious on how this plays. They've got a 5-second gap already on Valverde, who's been running the 145.2s, while these drivers are in the 144s. From what we've seen, what do you do at this point if you're Bennett and Pataska to play this out perfectly to try and win this race? Because they have the time cushion to fight. But as we've seen, the traffic has come into play many times, and the push to pass has continued to be the also heavy factor in this group.
Absolutely, that is a perfect point that you mentioned over there. For Bennett at this stage, I think attack is the best form of defense. You just have to go in there and try to make sure that you extend your track difference between yourself and Pataska. In the long run, this may not pay off, but you need to make statements of intent like this one to remind someone like Dallas Pataska that you too have the pace. You can get something done at your own will. And Pataska, at this stage, he seems to have the upper hand. He's sticking right there in a nice particular gap. He's nice and cozy, 8 tenths behind. And with all the push to passes for later on, he can make something happen in the later part of this race. So for Henry Bennett, it's all about keep on doing what he's doing at this stage and maybe later on defend extremely hard in the final part, as we now see Dawson Brock and Riley Thompson get fairly aggressive with each other, Justin.
Yes, indeed. And keep in mind, for the Major Series, Thompson works with TDR, switched over to Simsa Esports for all other aspects, continues to work with both of those organizations throughout 2020. And Thompson's been one of those drivers who's been pushing a fair bit at times throughout this run. He's down to just 5 push-to-passes for the final 23 laps.
Well, it's a tale of two sides, isn't it? Someone like Dallas Pataska not even using a single element of push to pass, and now Riley Thompson going completely aggressive on it. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the third box from the left, he has used 5 push to passes so far. So Riley Thompson, certainly an impatient driver who wants to get the moves done as soon as possible. That approach is working out to a degree. He's currently in P6, but in the long game, it may not favor him as much. Here he comes though, not too close to make a move heading into turn 5, but I have a feeling, Justin, Canada Corner is a place where Riley Thompson can make his mark and can make his moves if he gets this middle sector correctly.
Indeed, as he loses a bit of time in corner exit with some of the dirty air. Now, some of the things you see on that dash, by the way, also help you figure out what you need to plan out as a driver. It allows you to see the exact fuel remaining, not for spectators, for specific reasons, of course, but as well the intervals, your respective lap times, how many laps to go, as well as various other different data. That can be very useful as a driver throughout an entire race, as well, and by the way, the fuel economy.
Exactly, and that sort of data is crucial. Again, information and knowledge is gold dust in the world of motorsport, and lots of drivers prefer having a lot of data on their steering wheels as well. It just gives them a better idea of completely what's going on, and that they feel that way they're in complete control of all the situations. Because they have all the information at their fingertips, they can then adjust their driving styles, adjust how they go about with the race to manage things out perfectly. Now, this is what happens because we have so much access to technology in the world of motorsport these days. It just allows drivers to change their fly and change their approach on the fly, and that I think has made the racing far more better over here.
Dawson Brock has been closed back up by not just Thompson, but Joshua Wolf has recovered to reach the back end of this choo-choo train after losing some time due to going off in the grass. They'll also have lap traffic and Mike Gaunt to deal with, as he'll be on the right side of the racetrack likely this time.
Hasn't really been the best of races for Mike Gaunt, has it? He had an early crash later on, and as lap traffic, I think he will do a good job in letting all the other guys pass. He's a fairly experienced driver in that regard, but for all these other drivers, it can get so tricky when you're stuck up in the early half or you have an incident like that, and you know for a fact that the leaders are so much faster than you. It can just be such a major drag to keep on driving for 55 long laps. But again, that is when the circuit comes in handy. Because these Indy cars are so much fun to drive, you can have a good time over here at Road America.
Absolutely tricky. Lead is once again down to 0.3 of a second. And still a few laps or so from the pit window, about 7 laps. Pataska with a good corner exit. Bennett not using a push to pass to defend. Pataska using the draft to try and push to the left side of the racetrack. Will he try and make it stick this time? Off into turn 1? No. Let's Bennett hold on for the time being.
How long is Dallas Pataska going to wait? I think the answer is not too much, because he tries to make a move down the inside, swerves back around once again, and Henry Bennett once again holds the position off heading into turn 3. But I get a feeling that Dallas Pataska is getting racy. He's trying to put in a statement of intent, and he's trying to show Bennett, you know what, Henry, I am right here and I can make a move on my will. Still, Justin, no push to pass is used, and he's still getting so close. What a driver he is.
And they're using 2 different fuel mappings, by the way. Pataska in fuel mapping 2 for the road courses, Bennett in fuel mapping 1. As talked about, lifting and coasting, the better way to save fuel. But that's the difference is a little bit amongst these two drivers, just a little tiny bit.
Yes, indeed. Now though, Pataska on the charge, the carousel. I love this corner. Maybe we can speak about it in a bit more depth later on once this battle calms down a little bit. It's such a tricky one to handle though, and Henry Bennett and Pataska both handle it with with a superb ability. They're just clinical through this one, and here he comes though. Pataska getting racy, getting ever so closer on his gearbox. Is he going to just rip past? No, because Henry Bennett says, wait right here, I'm going to keep hold of P1 for now.
And with that fighting, we've just seen the side-by-side and the corner entry of turn 1. Valverde closed in about 2 seconds this lap alone. So the 381, he's closing the more they scrap.
Wow, that is a fantastic insight, Justin. Look at the gap on the live timing. Around 2.9 seconds between Valverde and the leaders. And trust me, when things go on later on, that's not a major gap to close back in. Here he comes though. Once again, Bennett blocks it off. And Justin, I am so interested in this. Where do you think Valverde is going to end up later on? Because he has to conserve in the last stint, and things can just blow up into open air this one.
And remember, he has an extra lap of fuel in his tank as well. See the differences in the intervals. Actually lost about a tenth or so throughout this lap. Remember, Pataska has the draft with Bennett. Valverde does not. He's been running on his own this entire run after 0.3 seconds on Banfield throughout this entire stint after being able to pull off the overcut.
And that overcut could come in so handy later on, because in that final stint, Valverde may be able to go hell for leather and get something in the bag. Still, I think he'll be satisfied with P3, but when he sees an opportunity to get into the top 2, trust me, P3 just isn't enough. The gap now is eased off a little bit as we see lap traffic at the carousel. And Justin, that is the absolute worst place at the track to get lap traffic, because over here, this particular corner, you mess up your line and you lose time in loads. There's just no record of how much time you can lose over there. Thankfully for Pataska, he just gained time over there, navigating through the traffic rather well. But trust me, things can go horribly wrong through the carousel with traffic.
By the way, before they went to the carousel and before that big Road America bridge, coming out of Hurry Downs, that lap traffic in Partridge nearly spun in front of the race leader, so that lost him a few tenths of a second from the checkup on top of that. So good heads up to be able to watch them, avoid that trouble with the 88, and then pass them in the carousel.
Indeed, that could be one approach that these guys can follow. Pataska comes in. I don't think he's using push to pass. I have a feeling that he's never going to use push to pass, to be honest. He's just preserving it for his next generation. But Pataska still nice and easy, nice and clean, heading into P2. And look at that, look at your screen. Wow, Valverde keeps on closing the gap now, 2.5 seconds. And this guy, the guy in the blue car who won the Indy 500, seems to be on the charge. He wants a piece of this action.
And he reached Partridge in a great spot down the Moraine sweep to be able to get the draft as well off the Road America straight and help close that gap. That's why he had a 144.9 compared to the 145s now in this lead grouping. So this is going to get really intriguing, because with the advantage of having the extra lap on this last pit stop for Valverde in that third position, he can take one less lap of fuel on the pit stop, may be able to save a tenth or two in the stop.
And apart from doing that as well, he can just push so hard in the final stint, and that can just hand Valverde the advantage. But remember, Dallas Pataska, 10 push to passes. He hasn't used even a single one of those. Maybe we can just have a look at how much Bennett has used to get a good idea of how things can level out later on and compare it with Valverde as well. But if there's one thing we all know, it's that all three drivers have a superb amount of pace. They can just go in and clock lap times unlike any other driver. So when things level out towards the end, you can expect fireworks here at Road America, in the day that is.
4 laps until the start of the fuel window to make it to the end of the race, as again, Bennett trying to break the slipstream. Pataska falling back to 0.6 of a second that time by at this point. Track temperature continuing to push up a little bit, by the way. Bouncing back and forth now to around 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, was as high as 115. The drivers left with push to pass. Bennett with 7. Pataska with a grand total of 10 still. Valverde with an 8 amount of push to passes. Banfield has only used 1.
Indeed, things are just playing out in the hands of Pataska at this stage, considering how many push to passes he has. He just likes to keep his cards close to his chest, and that is exactly what he's doing at this stage. Closing up the gap though, around 0.4 of a second. he's just sticking back around, and he is a classic example of a very, very measured driver. Someone like Lewis Hamilton back in the world of Formula One, who knows exactly the right time when you need to go out there and get the moves done. There's no rush, there's no hurry. It's a long race, this one. 555 laps of Road America, a 6-kilometer track. So Pataska certainly knows that the rush isn't exactly there at this stage, and that's why he's keeping his card so close to his chest as we now see some action heading down towards turn 5, Justin. That is Riley Thompson, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, indeed, that's a swap for position. Wolf able to pass by Riley Thompson. Also had traffic they also had to navigate. That was John Lane, who's been quietly running in P32, 2 laps down that they had to deal with. So they're starting to scrap a little bit as well. Ty Kevitt just took P8 for Black Eagle Sim Racing around Marcus Niskanen back in P8.
So certain drivers are making up positions right here on the circuit. There are plenty of opportunities. The middle stint can get a bit dull at times, but these drivers haven't let that happen as Niskanen goes all spinning around 360. What's happened here?
So a major mistake for Niskanen, loses him at least one spot and pushes him now 45 seconds back to the race leader. Does have a massive cushion to his teammates Mickey and Crum though. They're a minute 17 and minute 18 back. The leader's still chunking along as they pulled the gap back forward on Valverde throughout the past few laps after single filing out. Back to 3.4 seconds from the race leader to Valverde.
And Valverde doing a nice and easy job there in P3. Of course, he's lost a bit of time, down to 3.4 seconds. But realistically, there still is a chance. Now, Justin, here we come back again to the pit windows. Ideally, if the pit stop strategy is around 13 laps, they should be coming in rather soon because we're on lap 39 and we are fast approaching the final pit stops for this race. Now things are going to be very interesting. How are they going to play it out? Valverde, of course, as we know, is going to go a lap longer. But in the end, I think the pit stops are going to have a critical impact on the final stint of this race. And eventually, this battle will get ever so close. The drivers will take their elbows out and we could be seeing a battle royale to the finish.
I think so too at this point. Still though, 16 to go this time by as these drivers chug along. Let's take a look at the Race Spot TV replay as something going on. This is Andy Banfield for the Apex Racing Group.
Oh boy, Banfield just gets it horribly wrong. I think, again, the turn 5 corner has got up so many people. Again, it's easier said than done. You can break it around the 300 marker right there. Break in, hit your apexes because that's how you get all your time. And power out rather smoothly on the throttle. But what's happened is because you go downhill towards that corner, you can mess up your braking line a little bit too much. Or perhaps if you've got some errors with your brake bias, if you apply too much pressure. So that downhill section right there has caught out many people on the entry. And towards the exit, just getting too much throttle in too early has caught out too many people on the exit as well. So turn 5, it's just been a car killer at this stage.
Several drivers have made mistakes in that section. Just a mistake now from Dawson Brock coming down to the final corner. Just lost in P5 to his fellow teammate after he clipped the grass coming down the Road America straight. Here's what happened with that group. And just enough to be able to clip the grass on the left side tires and lose enough momentum and speed to let his teammate on by.
Not exactly multi-21 is that. He just got it all wrong towards the exit, and what you have to do is just smoothen out on the exit. Try and make sure that you have the right tight line to get the full use of the tarmac towards the end, but not going too fast as well. The carousel is the place to be. And indeed, once again, the gap is now nice and smooth towards the top. Pataska 8 tenths behind.
Gap now up to 8 tenths. Some drivers had to come down and will have to do the forward stop likely, with the ones off cycle with various different faster pairs used in the early portion of this race. And that's the factor too of having trouble early on. Not as much attrition compared to the international split, yes. But it can definitely be a deflator if you have to come down for that extra stop just for a splash.
Indeed, what happens is you can just go horribly out of cycle, and then, it can wreck your race of sorts, but if you're a good driver, if you're opportunistic about situations, and if you're fairly optimistic, you can look at it from a different angle. Maybe you can think, okay, now that I'm out of cycle, I have the luxury of doing something different. Perhaps I can go some really fast stints, clock in some qualifying laps and go for a short pit stop strategy. Maybe just try and experiment with something, and if it works out, well and good. That way at least you can enjoy a race and have a new experience of sorts. Again, lots of things can be done over here at Road America, and one thing that's going to happen is cars on the pit lane for the routine pit stops rather soon as Ross Banfield from P4 heads onto pit road.
Now becomes the question for Banfield. He was losing time throughout this stint. Who may have been trying to save fuel about a second or so a lap in some points. Is he going to be able to make it to the end? He is going to have to make it 15 laps.
Oh boy. 15 laps here at Road America on a single splash of fuel. Oof, there are not many tougher things to do in the world of iRacing. Trust me, he will just have to lift and coast so much over here. And around the corner like a carousel, he'll just have to ease off the throttle, lose so much of time. On one side of things, you can save a lot of fuel like that, but you're going to be losing ample of time to all the other cars behind you. So for Banfield, things are not really looking so good over here.
Not looking good for Pataska because you may notice it's now 1.6 seconds and lost a lot of track position in terms of distance. That's because out of turn 6, had to save the car after a massive slide and lit up the rear tires. However, here's the bright side. They're expected to pit this time by. This is lap 14 coming to the line. Will they duck down? Yes, they will. Final pit stops for the top two.
Here they come. The critical moment for this race. Now we're going to see all the drivers bunching up to each other. And this battle for the lead, it's just going to blow up in this final part of the race. Keep a keen eye on the timing of their pit stops. Are they going to go for something different? Maybe so shorter one for each of these drivers. Let's have a look at this. Bennett and Pataska both in the lane. And now, Justin, I have a feeling that it's just going to be a proper intense battle royale to the end. I can't wait for it.
That was Kim Johansson also coming out as the leaders came in. Held up Pataska just a touch. See if that becomes a factor. Pataska up on the jacks. Bennett ready to rev his engine. Off and away go both drivers. And because of that strong pit entry from Pataska, that 1.6 second gap, quickly just got reduced back to just a couple tenths. Oh, with Darwin Might saying hello as well.
He's popped into the action. This one, Darwin Might. Remember, this could be for position, is it?
No, it's not.
It's not really, yeah. So Might's just having an easy thing over there. He'll have to let Pataska past. Lapped car and fight Darwin Might. And Pataska now, is he finally going to use a push to pass to get past the lapped car? Oh, let's see. Is he so patient that he's not used one push to pass till lap 42 of a 55 lap race? I don't know. I don't think so. Oh, they get so close. Oh, boy. That was... that could have gone so wrong.
Lap car spins its way out of the way that time. And all of a sudden, the battle for the net lead has closed up. Also a bit of mistake for Ty Kevith coming out of turn 3. Lost him P6 at the moment on the racetrack. Oh, and they also cycled in front of many of the drivers who still have to pit in this lap.
Oh boy, this is just the ultimate way of losing time. My goodness, that lap car, Darwin Mites over there, not leaving any room for both the other the potential lead cars over there. So Darwin Mites, well, in the post-race debrief, he may be having a few aggressive words heard towards him, if of course Pataska isn't able to get something done towards the later half. Wow, Valverde in the pit lane once again. So this battle for the top 3 can be cycling in rather soon. And for these guys, heading towards lap traffic and cars who haven't really pitted yet is just the ultimate disadvantage. That dirty air can completely knock off such a huge amount of time from their lap times. Here they come. Are they going to pass Valverde? They are indeed. But how close is Valverde going to be? That is the question. He seems to be close, but not close enough for the lead so far. He needs to put in a mega last stint to get something done for the lead here.
He actually joins the battle for the race lead. My goodness, Valverde has been the quickest driver in the pits, it seems. Has gained about 2 to 3 seconds each stop. That was a 9.6 second stop, and he still gained all the time.
How did he get that done? Wow, Valverde. I just spoke a couple of seconds ago that he may just have to wait out a little bit there. He may be too far behind. And all of a sudden, he's proved me wrong. And he's back into this battle for the top 3. And trust me, I am so happy to be proven wrong over here because this just means that we have a rather fun race for this one. No longer is it a 2-horse race, Justin. It is a proper 3-way fight. The 3 musketeers up on top trying to fight out for supremacy here at Road America.
Check that on the 9.6, included the roll into the pit box, a 9.1. And there goes that 1 second of fuel, or 1 lap of fuel we talked about, to be able to shave off a few tenths in the stop. That gained him a ton of track position with that call, especially since that strategy to go to lap 14 on that second stop may have been something that's now made it a 3-car scrap to decide this race as lap traffic moves out of the way.
Oh boy, they're getting all so close to each other. This is the battle we're looking out for. Going side by side. Wow, Valverde trying to go around the outside. This is going to be daring. All three of them are fighting it out for P1, and they make contact. Oh boy, it's Patasca and Valverde, both of them. Ooh, no.
Patasca nearly hit the gearbox in front of him for Bennett, spun off the racetrack. Valverde also collected in the calamity, and now Bennett leads by 3 seconds. Front wing damage on some of the race cars after that incident, a race-changing event.
This just put things all the way up in the air. Here comes Patasca. Note, he's defending so hard from Valverde. Gives a gentle kiss up ahead to the car of Bennett, and things just go out of hand so quickly for him, Justin.
Did tap the right front wing on the car and damaged it. But a major mistake for Patasca, as it just seemed like he was trying to outbrake Valverde, but in turn, Bennett was backing up the apex.
That's the danger of Road America. When you have so many opportunities to try and get something done, Patasca just seemed to crack under the pressure of Valverde coming in to attack him. And it's a tricky situation to be. From experience, when you have lots of cars ahead of you and behind you, you just don't know what to do. It's such a hard place to be in. And Patasca, who seemed to be invincible throughout this race, has finally cracked with this one incident right here.
I don't think the battle for the lead's over yet, though, Samil, because Valverde's closed up the gap already to 2 seconds, doesn't have any damage, and Bennett doesn't have any cosmetic damage with that tap to the back end of the car. The question's going to be, how does Valverde play this? 11 laps to go this time by, with 6 push-to-passes left.
I just can't wait to see how it pans out in the end. Valverde, of course, on the pace once again. He's trying to gain as much time as he possibly can over here. But that last lap did dent his chances a little bit. He seemed to be getting his elbows out. He was getting very aggressive. And now that one extra lap that he saved up by heading into the pit lane and having a faster stop, it's all nullified. Valverde has to do something right here on his merit on the track. This is when all the strategies, all the games that you play in the pit stop elements are gone into the trash bin. This is now a war of the actions, not the war of the words. And now Valverde, it's his final few opportunities to get into P1. He certainly can do it though.
Now push to pass used by Valverde into turn 1, 1:44.6, his fastest lap of the race. Now down to 1.7 seconds or so, the gap between him and Bennett. 10 laps to go this time by. Valverde looking for his second victory in the IndyCars this season.
He won, of course, in the Indy 500, a rather prestigious event to win, and it can be a double sweep for him in the American events right here. 1.7 seconds the gap now. Valverde is just closing in inch by inch, and just take a look at the way he drives. They stay on board with him for a short while. Now notice, he'll be clicking in every single apex to get the best time from every single laps. He knows that in Formula 1 terms, this is hammer time. This is when he has to lay the gauntlet down and go in hard for the win.
We're not talking about the hammer dance. We're talking about putting the hammer to the metal. Put the pedal to the metal and try and make the car fly. Gain 3/10 that time out of hurry downs.
That is some proper aggression here for Valverde. He is actually leading by example, trying to get something done. The gap is now closed down to 1.3 seconds, and with around 10 laps to go, it certainly is doable. Valverde right now seems to be an outsider in this one. A dark horse, so to say, has now put himself firmly into contention. And with Patasca all the way back down into P3 at this stage, it is Valverde's time to shine in the light, step into the spotlight, and get the win for himself.
Keep in mind, traffic may play a factor. Some of the 4 stoppers just came in. Belval and Romner, they'll pass by them. Several other drivers are up the road and win the battle for 15th and 16th position. Valverde saving the push to pass this time. Bennett has 6 of them. So Valverde down -1 as we take a look at the trap map. And you can see how much traffic is starting to build just in front of the leaders. Then some clear space for a few laps before the closing stages.
And now this is going to be a major tricky challenge for them. With all the lap cars up ahead of him, it's all about how you can use this to the perfect advantage. it can affect you both while attacking and defending as well. But if you're just in the right place at the right time, it can play into your hands rather well. Valverde has cut the gap down to under a second. Justin, things are just heating up so much over here, and the intensity level, well, the dial has been turned up a notch to 11 now.
Pretty sure it's almost towards 12 or 13 actually at this point, as it's now under a second. And Valverde, reminder too, with that later pit stop, has 1 lap fresher tires. He's been able to send it a little bit more deeper on the brakes compared to Bennett this entire run compared to how he was running at the start of the race.
And every single one of those factors counts at this stage. The push to pass, the tires, the tire temperatures that you're operating on, and just the way you drive. When the battle for the lead is so exciting as this one, every single thing matters. And for Valverde, it's just all about keeping his head down and being as calm as possible and making sure that he makes the best use of this opportunity that he's got over here. Henry Bennett as well, he's been defending so hard for the entirety of this race with Protaska, but now that Protaska is gone, he's out of the picture for this one, he has a new challenger. How will Valverde attack? Well, Protaska was rather conservative in his approach, but Valverde will not. Valverde will be aggressive as much as he possibly can.
Remember, that victory in the Indianapolis 500-mile race back in the spring was his first victory of the season. Can he get his second victory? Or will Henry Bennett get his first W of the campaign? Only about 8.8 laps to go this time to find out. Still 1 second the bubble. Traffic is in front. That's Chuck Show, 13th place, trying to move out of the way.
Indeed, and that lap traffic can have such a major impact towards this stage of this race. And right now, doing a good job there, Bennett trying to avoid that. The lap traffic is just creating so many problems for these leaders consistently. Now, so many drivers have stopped in right in front of all the lead cars, and they're causing them to lose time. And it's happened once again. The gap, Justin, 0.4 of a second. The lap traffic is just causing so many problems here.
Yeah, I thought Show would maybe have moved along to the side of the track by now, but it's actually continuously lost Bennett time because of the dirty air. All of a sudden, that 1 second gap just went to just 0.3. Make it 0.4 coming down the kettle bottoms this time.
Oh boy, this is going to be so much fun. Valverde not throwing slings and arrows, but mines and missiles right now. Here he comes towards Canada corner, not close enough, and that lap traffic still there, still not moved past. Now he has, thankfully, and Bennett will be so relieved now that he has seen the back of the white car right now. Oof, that got so close over there, and Valverde has just played the trump card right now, and he is ever so close here.
Valverde did a great job on the outside, that time through Canada corner to make the move. Push to pass used. Valverde looking to make the push now. 4 remaining. Bennett trying to defend, doesn't use one. Valverde to the left side of the racetrack for the race lead. No, has to back off.
But he will be going on the aggressive once again over here past turn 1 for this fast right hand king. That is turn 2. Turn 3, not quite there. Watch out for turn 5. It is one place on the track where you can bully anyone else. Is he on the push to pass over here? I think it would be. This is the time to make use of it. On the slipstream. To the inside he goes. Heading towards the inside line of turn 5 for the lead, Valverde, and he rips past.
First lead change of the race comes with 8 laps to go. No push to pass was used, by the way. Bennett, though, has +2 on the push to pass to try and battle back.
This may be such a critical factor over here, Justin. Lap 48 of 55, this one. Here he comes once again. Bennett is still on the charge, and the lap traffic is still trying to stay rather close to him. Of course, it won't have a major impact on Bennett as long as he's behind, but he just needs to pick his pace up because the gap now around 0.6 of a second, and Valverde is just picking up his wings and is flying into the distance.
It's the first time Bennett has been in P2 this entire day. Remember, started on the pole, had a good jump, held off Protaska this entire run. Now, the question's going to be, when does he use some of his push to passes? Did use one down kettle bottoms. That time he's got 5 left.
And 5 could be an ample at this stage. Not a lot of laps left now. The time is running out at this stage, and making the best use of a push to pass, that's not luxury, that is an imperative if you want to get the win over here.
Bennett not using it down the straight, trying to use the slipstream. Valverde not using one with 7 laps to go. Bennett back within about 0.2 of a second. Lost about 7/10 of a second with that pass last time by Darnier. Lifts, forces the lift, another 10th lost.
Here he comes now, still quite close to him. Bennett not letting go, he's still staying on the very tail of it. The gap is consistently being maintained at around 5/10 of a second, but Bennett has got to do something better than this one. He can't leave it later on towards the final laps, because while Valverde, we have seen from experience, he is a tough defender. When he grabs onto a position, it's like a young kid grabbing onto the finger of their mother. They just don't let go of it. You do whatever you want to, but Valverde will not try and let go of that. And for Bennett, he will have to force Wow into making a mistake. Doable? Certainly. Easiest job in the world? Certainly not.
Lap traffic moves to the left side, this time through hurry downs. Doesn't force a hold up quite too much, but Bennett did lose a couple tenths on corner exit. That was the 24th place driver, by the way, of Sarkvist, who is affiliated with SimRace for Mental Health and UDocs Motorsports. But 6 to go again. Bennett still trying to keep within the draft. Valverde still has 4 push-to passes left. Bennett has 5 as he tries to take advantage and try and close back up after what was a dominant performance for the first 3 quarters of this race.
Why does it seem to be getting too anticlimactic at this stage? Valverde is leader of this one, and the gap is still quite decent right now, around 6/10 of a second. It just seems to be going out of the hand of Henry Bennett, but remember not to spoil any hopes. In the world of motorsport, anything can happen, and Bennett, if the lap traffic comes through, he can have an opportunity. Using the slipstream, look at Valverde swerving around to try and make sure that Bennett doesn't get the draft. But he sure does, and he closes up heading into turn 1, which is a fairly deceptive corner. It looks slow, but when you actually go to drive over it, you can brake so much later and can carry so much speed through this one. Such a fun corner, and now for the Moraine sweep here.
Once again, back in that section, still doesn't use the push to pass to close it back up. Coming to 5 laps to go this time by. They've also pulled now 10 seconds from Dallas Pataska after his incident. Bennett misses the corner. Off the curbing, loses a few tenths on that corner exit. What a mistake for Bennett.
This can be the defining moment of the race, along with that crash and the move for the lead over here. Bennett had the opportunity but went wide and lost how much time? Look at that. That is approximately what? 6 to 8 tenths that he's lost over there in that one particular corner. With only 5 laps to go over here, that is going to be hard time to make up over here for Henry Bennett. Just losing so much. Thankfully, he's not really gone too aggressive on the throttle once again, so he doesn't really spin out. But Valverde, he sees that in the rear mirror, and he just takes a breath of relief. He knows for a fact that he has a bit of a cushion, but not enough. Bennett still on the charge.
2 of the top IndyCar drivers in all of iRacing looking to scrap. High 5 from the flag stand this time by. Valverde looking for a 2nd win of the Major Series European split, while Bennett looking for his first. 5 to go, this time down the road America Straight. Traffic is a bit up the road, maybe a factor in the closing stages. Kim Johansson, Liam Sheener just up the track.
And if these guys could communicate with them, they would just be shouting on the radio, get away, move away, get past, do not hamper our battle. Because if they do, either of these two drivers over here could be leaving home with a very, very frowning face and through no fault of their own. Here they come. Is this going to be another use of the push to pass for Bennett? Valverde goes slightly wide on the sand for a little bit. Doesn't lose control though. Just uses every single inch and millimeter of this track. Remember, racing drivers, if you give them an inch, they'll take a country mile, and that is exactly what Valverde is doing at this stage. Another battle here, Justin.
Bennett in that last battle did use the push to pass to close the gap. Here's the battle going on that we followed all throughout the race. Thompson, Brock, Wolf. He's 7 through 5 in this group. They also have Robertson that's just up the road in terms of traffic. This is where just 2 push to passes remain for Thompson. Brock has 6, Wolf has 8.
And now is the time where you have to actually make use of all of those 8. That's too much of a luxury to carry at this stage. Oh boy, the other car, that's Riley Thompson, is there? He gets rather uncomfortably close over there. Things could have gone wrong, but he controls it thankfully. And look at his car just swerving around. He doesn't seem to have barely any control. In the mid-corner, his car doesn't seem to be the most comfortable one. And that can lose you such a big amount of time at Road America, where mid-corner grip is critical to getting a good lap.
Absolutely. Again, these are valuable points still on the line, especially with how close the team battle is. Lead is close still. Again, Bennett scoring points for TDR in this championship. 4 to go. This time, no push to passes used on this lap entry.
Staying back, staying calm. Patience is a virtue, but it's not something that you need at this particular part of the race. 0.462 seconds the gap. 4/10, that is, in layman's terms. It's not gone back to 5.
Trouble Thompson. The 58 is off the track. Trouble at a Canada corner from 7th spot. Car is rolling to a stop at the edge of the racetrack.
Has he run out of fuel here? What's going on now? If he's slowing down this much, it's a classic sign that he's run out of fuel. There doesn't seem to be a crash of sorts.
Blew an engine.
No, it goes wild. Oh boy. Blown engine.
Might have had a missed shift in the middle of the apex.
Ooh, no.
See if we can take a listen here on this because it is big. Take a listen. Just lets go right in the middle of the corner.
That is agonizing for Riley Thompson. He was having such a good race in P7, and of all the things in the world that could have gone wrong, it had to be a blown engine in the virtual world. Riley Thompson will be kicking himself. He just can't do anything about it. Oh, that is an agonizing low blow for him.
So, a top 10 run out of the picture after having a strong performance in Le Mans 2.4, winning his respective class. But up at the front, both of these drivers used the push to pass down Kettle Bottoms. 3 remaining with 3 laps to go for these two.
If you were a race engineer at this stage communicating to these guys, there will be only one word you'll be using on the radio. Push, 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 and push to pass as well. Look at Valverde trying to swerve around to make sure that Bennett doesn't get the draft, but he still does. He's still closing in, heading into turn 1, nose to tail over here, not gearbox to gearbox as such. They're not that close, but yeah, they will be getting so close in a quick amount of time if Bennett can get something done. He needs to pull out something magical from the hat. This is the time when you need to do something really special and show the world that you can get something done at the right time.
Will he use the magic wand to try and get himself up at the front of the match's speed boost? No, he doesn't. Down the Moraine sweep. Does close up with a slipstream. Again loses time, though. Off corner exit in turn 5. Second time in about 4 laps, he's lost a bit of time on the corner exit.
Indeed, and Valverde is just capitalizing on that. He is nice and calm, defending his position for all his might. We still haven't seen a dive bomb of sorts from Henry Bennett, but Valverde knows for a fact that that dive bomb is coming. It's like a ticking time bomb, this one. He knows for a fact that it's going to come. The question is, when and where?
Lost another 3/10 in Sector 2 through the carousel. Back along the straightaway, will use the push to pass. Doesn't. Valverde doesn't as well. 2 laps to go this time, and 3 push to passes in hand. Huge send for Bennett, closes up the gap.
He's licking the stamp and sending it at this stage, but he has to do something even better. Maybe he has to lick 4 or 5 stamps and send it at this stage, considering the gap that Valverde has built up at this point. He is just building a proper fortress around this car while Valverde not letting go of it. He's been calm as ever, composed as ever. Here we come to start yet another lap. And for Bennett, the time runs out ever so much. It's going to be a tough one for him.
Looking like they're trying to preserve their push to passes for the right moment still. Didn't use them down the Road America straight this time. Neither of them to defend or to battle. But down the back straight again, down the Moraine sweep. 1.5 laps to go this time.
Look at Valverde swerving around once again. It's been such a usual thing that he's done so far. Is it going to come this time heading into turn 5? No. Valverde blocks. Bennett stays behind. Loses a bit of time on corner exit, but not as much. They're still nose to tail with each other. This is still going to be a good battle. And trust me, things can blow up over here. Only a couple of laps left to go.
Missed the corner apex, off 6 with the dirty air. Once again, the harder send, the Kinetic Racing driver trying to hold on. His team won earlier this weekend in the international split. They look to try and go 2 for 2 once again in a series event.
And look at this, Valverde pulling up the gap. This is a proper sign of domination. He's pulling up the gap when he most needs to, and very, very soon we're going to be coming across the white flag. This is the moment of truth over here. Bennett closes in once again. You take a look at this one, corner by corner. The gap is inching ever so closer, but Valverde, calm as you like, keeping things nice and easy. Here we come, Justin. One more corner before the white flag. Let's go for this.
2 push-to-passes remaining. Both droppers used them down the kettle bottoms. 1 lap to go. White flag is out from Barney the flagman. Up at the stand. Who will come with the victory? It's between Valverde and Bennett for race 8 of the Major Series European split. Neither of them used the push-to-pass down the straight, but 2 lap cars are ahead. Peter Vostro and Mike Gahn are both up the track. Could be a factor in this final lap.
A major factor indeed. That can completely change the complexion of this race on the very last lap of all the times in the world. Here they come past the straight. If you're the lap traffic, get out of the way right now. You don't want to hog them up. And the first car does that, rightfully so. Heading into turn 5. Is there a chance for a move, Justin? No, I don't think so. The chances are running out like sand in an hourglass. Things are just getting out of hand over here for Bennett.
Down to 1 push to pass remaining. Could come down to Canada corner to try and decide this race. Will Bennett be close enough is the question. Traffic moves to the right side of the track this time. Gaunt stays on the outside groove. Bennett dives to the inside. Moves by the lap car. Is separated by about 6/10, about 5 car lengths between the 2 drivers. Will run through the carousel in the bend.
And the exit here is going to be so important. The Canada corner is pretty much the last chance that they've got here to make a good move. Past the quick right-hand kink. They're close. But I have a feeling they're not close enough, Justin. I have a feeling that Valverde has just got in the picture. Here comes the push to pass though. Here they come, braking for Canada. And Valverde is up ahead.
1 lap car spun around, stays on the right side of the racetrack. That's Eric Mickey staying out of the way for the battle. Bennett, 1 final corner. Out of the Bill Mitchell bend. Hard brake. Tries to diamond it off the corner. Pushes off. Valverde down the final straight. Yo Valverde wins his 2nd race of the Major Series season, and it comes at Elkhart Lake.
What a dramatic finish that was in the end. Bennett always showed signs of potential, always got closer, but wow, Valverde, who for most of the race seemed to be the outsider, the dark horse, has grabbed the opportunity by the jugular and has taken this win in commanding fashion. Pataska finishing at P3.
Yes, indeed. Wolf up now to P4. That's after Ross Banfield had to take a stretch of 15 laps for the end of this run. Brock in the top 5. Impressive drive for Banfield. Sacrificed 2 spots, yes, come to the stripe, but just saved enough fuel to be the only driver to make it 15 laps on a stint.
That is an achievement in itself. You know, you could make a trophy for that as well. Doing a 15 lap stint at Road America. Banfield in the end, going a bit too hard early on, didn't really pay off for him. But I think he'll be pretty satisfied with that final stint and conserving so much over here. Maybe a tough drive this one, a long and arduous one, but P6 is a fair result for that in the end.
In total, 9 drivers finish on the lead lap. Niskanen, Kevith, and Crum will be the last of those machines. And what was an eventful one today here at Road America. The last of the drivers making their way across the stripe in the next few moments. What an impressive race here at Road America. Came down to the very end, but Valverde played the strategy card perfectly to win this race.
He did indeed. Heading into P3, I think at one point of time, he just seemed to be ruled out for the race over there. But what a comeback he's made. He's used every single opportunity presented to him in the best possible way. And that is what it is. In life, you have to be resourceful and not full of resources. And Valverde, he's picked up the scraps of whatever he possibly could have and has taken home the grandest prize of them all, victory at Road America.
A very big one for the championship standings too. The points leader stretches his gap with a victory by just over 0.2 of a second. Dallas Pataska, after having trouble in Canada corner in the battle for the race lead, ends up finishing P3 with a damaged wing. Wolf, Brock, and Banfield round out the top 6. Keep in mind, Banfield did stretch at 15 laps on the fuel. Niskanen, Kevith, and Crum rounded out the top 9. And we mentioned Eric Mickey at the side of the road. He was in that grouping amongst his teammates before falling 1 lap down on the final lap Samil.
Then, of course, we move on to Kim Johansson, who had a very, very eventful race over here, rounding off in P11 with David H. Baker in 12, Claude Belval in 13. He pitted very, very early in comparison to all the other drivers, so it's a good result for him. Riley Thompson towards the end, what could have been for him? That engine blowout just compromising his race so much, with Marcus Romer in 15th, Robertson 16th, Darwin Mines finishing up in 17th after being lapped, Travis Henderson in 18th, Isaac Snyder in 19th, and Trevor Wawrowski ending up in 20th, Justin.
21st spot, the last driver one lap down, Tom Drelling, the last overall driver to finish this race in the 54. Chuck Scholl finished 2 laps down to 22nd, where he started. Liam Sheen finished 23rd after being involved in an early incident, with Sornqvist making a one-off start, finishing 24th. Andy Banfield finished 25th, Ray Partridge 26th after early crashes. Michael Lane finished in 27th, with Colin Martzoff in 28th. Peter Vostro was lapped in the closing stage of the race, 3 laps down, along with Mike Goff. John Lane rounds out the drivers 3 laps down, and Hagström, after technical issues, recovered to lose an additional lap during the race. 4 laps down is where he finishes. Cordell Cologne ends up being the only DNF. 19 laps down is that total, did make it past the halfway point for the 51 machine. A very eventful race, to say the very least, especially at the very end, with lots of strategy here at Road America. But a 2-for-2 start to the Major Series for round number 8 for Kinetic Racing, with their Kinetic Racing International Division and now Kinetic Racing Europe, Samil.
Indeed, that was such a good race for all these guys in the end. And I mean, I don't understand why people don't like Road America at times. It's such a good circuit. It can breed up so many good strategic elements. And in the end, that battle, I absolutely enjoyed it. This is the proper way to spend your Sunday. If not driving at Road America in Indy cars, perhaps even watching it. I really enjoyed that. And the Major Series, as always, never disappoints.
And we talked about the performances for some of these teams today. With some of these drives really could shake up the team standings, because the bombshell machines around the bottom half of the top 10, many other teams bumped their way to the points. A lot to discuss over the next few weeks and after the summer break. We'll take a quick break for ourselves. Post-race coverage continues after this quick break. You're watching RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network for the virtual Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
We are back at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, where the field is rolling out for the start of today's 400-lap race on this .625-mile racetrack. And just as the field comes around turn number 4, the sunshine peeks through, helping warm things here. Bill Elliott leads him down. Benny Parsons on the outside. The green flag flies, and the first Union 400 Winston Cup race from North Wilkesboro is underway. Everybody nicely through turns number 1 and 2 as Bill Elliott has the lead, and Dale Earnhardt has jumped into second position, followed by Benny Parsons and Bobby Allison. Oh, here we go. It's just about to go away. They both coming out of turn 4. Earnhardt gets the lead. We had just heard from our spotters that Neil Ryan. Dale Earnhardt is on his last lap. This will be his 24th career win. Dale Earnhardt wins the first Union 400 at North Wilkesboro.
Welcome back, everyone, to Road America for today's coverage of the Major Series European Split, live for round number 8 of the 2020 season. Justin Prince, Emil Aurora, Arjuna Kantipanti with you for today's action for what was an exciting finish between two of the best drivers in all of IndyCar racing. On the iRacing service, Go Valverde and Henry Bennett scrapped to the very end to determine the winner of today's event. But for Kinetic Racing, it is their second victory in 2 events here at Road America. They're the winners of the European Pro Split. Yo Valverde with his second victory of the campaign for the points leader. Valverde, first things first, how are you feeling coming away with your second victory in this type of car, this campaign?
Honest answer, relieved. That was a massive battle at the end. I was just talking to Henry. I was shaking at the end. That was amazing.
Talk us through, first off, the strategy calls, because on the second stop, you stretched an extra lap, which allowed you to take one less lap of fuel for the final stop. What was going through your head as you gained 3 seconds each pit stop?
So, first of all, much of the responsibility of that goes to Liam Quinn. He was spotting me all the way in. He was basically strategy leader. And I think the key was what you said, first and second stint, where I managed to save a lot of fuel. I also was able to put good in laps and not lose too much time there. Final stint, I had plenty of fuel to go. I could push all the way, and Dallas and Henry were just there. After that, it was just roll the dice and see where I could pass them.
It wasn't easy for you once you got up to the leaders because you did close up that gap in part with the pit stops, but did have the trouble with Pataska in front. How difficult was it after what happened there in Canada Corner to reel back in that 2.5 seconds over that span of 5-10 laps?
I think the key part was keeping calm after that. I realized after the first and second corners after that my car was okay, and the difference was that Henry had to save and I didn't. I could push. So I pretty much knew that sooner or later I would get close to him. Overtaking would be a bit tougher. And as soon as I did, I knew that he didn't need to save because he would just stay on my draft.
Now, overall, this is the second victory for your team this weekend in this event, first coming in the international split with O'Leary. Overall, what does this mean for you and your organization to have strong performances at tracks such as this as a unit?
I think it speaks more on the type of car and the type of team members we have. Everybody works well together. The IndyCar specialists work maybe for 3 weeks to support the guys that are not usually able to run this car this well. Uh, I expect the same momentum to be kept not only for the the American division, but also most likely at the final race of IndyCar at Auto Club.
Indeed, but bit of a summer break coming up for a month or so. Then, when the action gets back rolling in August, it's going to be a different race because it's the Knoxville Nationals for the major series, and it's dirt racing with the 410 sprints. Your thoughts on that race?
Oh, it's gonna be interesting for sure. I don't really drive that car, so let's call it a learning experience.
Good way to put it. With that, anything you'd like to add or anyone you want to thank for being a part of your victory tonight?
Like I said, Mr. Quinn, that thoroughly deserves the title of spotter of the season for me, and the boys at Kinetic Racing. They've been amazing. All the strategies, all the talks, all the support. Big kudos to those guys.
Congratulations on your second victory of 2020. Well deserved.
Thank you, boys. Thank you so very much. Keep up the good work.
Valverde coming away with the W today by just above 0.2 of a second over Henry Bennett, who absolutely had a powerful car to say the very least, but lost the lead in the final stages. He's standing by with some ill.
Henry, well, firstly, wow, that was rather eventful race. How do you think it went for you? And are you satisfied with that P2 in the end?
Went okay, but it was my race to lose really. Um, just didn't drive fast enough.
No, I think you surely did. In the first half of the race, I think you were doing such a commanding job. Can you give us a bit of a better idea about how the strategy was playing out in the early part with, I think, Bataska right behind you for most of the race?
Yeah, with the lap count and the fuel tank size, um, it was always going to be beneficial to fuel save. So it meant three fuel save stints and one non-fuel saving stint. And if you have the lead, it's usually better to well, at the very start of the race, you got the pace lap, and if you're in the lead, you're going to have a harder time saving. So the first stint was all about trying to build a gap to P2 and P3, and then fuel save for the last three stints. But yeah, couldn't shake off Dallas. He was driving really well. I wasn't really nailing my laps either. So yeah, he was still on me, pressuring me all race. And then yeah, fuel saving went okay. Again, didn't really drive fast enough. Lap cars were yeah interesting, let's say. Um, and yeah, Dallas was with me all the way, and I think he was in good position with the draft. He could save much easier than me, because in the draft you can lift a lot more on the straights at the end of the straights, but in P1 you're really using all your fuel to get through the air. And yeah, pit stops went okay. Maybe lost a couple of seconds on the last pit stop. Yeah, and Zhao was always going to be a danger. He did really well to go that one extra lap for the first stint. So it meant he didn't need to save for the last stint. So yeah, he's always going to be a danger, but at the end of the day, I just didn't drive fast enough.
I think you still did quite a good job coming into P2, but let's speak about the defining moment of this race because of the accident that happened between Pataska and Valverde right there. What was your viewpoint of that one? Of course, you were just right ahead of those guys. Were you looking back in your mirror and jumping up in excitement, knowing that maybe with these two guys out, you can win commandingly, which of course eventually didn't happen in the end, sadly.
And at that point, I think me and Dallas had just come out the pits the lap before, and Zhao had just pitted that very lap, and had joined us in the fight. I came across a lap car going into the carousel, and he promptly decided to disappear off the screen, which is always nice, and then reappeared right in front of my nose on the exit of the carousel, so I had to lift and tap the brakes, and that meant Dallas and Zhao could get a really good run through the kink and down the back straight. Yeah, we were all piling into Canada corner on top of each other, and it looked like Dallas just went in a tiny bit too hot. I'm not sure whether he actually made contact with me or it was just net code, but yeah, I got a 4x, and yeah, he spun trying to slow down. And yeah, luckily it didn't take Zhao out either, and they both managed to continue. But yeah, after that, I wasn't sure whether I had damage or not, so I had to take it quite easily for the next lap. But yeah, that meant Zhao could make progress on me, and I was still saving fuel at that point, so it was easy for him to get the lead. And then once he did, it was just a case of me staying in contact until I'd saved enough fuel to start attacking.
Yeah, indeed. In the end, of course, you came home in P2. Not a bad result, I would call it that way. But what's your approach and what's your strategy and outlook, so to say, for all the other races coming up on the major series calendar?
I probably won't be doing all the rounds, so I won't be competing for the title. So the rounds I do, I'll just be going for wins. I know this win meant a lot to Zhao because he's obviously doing all the rounds and he's got a win already this season, so he's in contention for the title. So yeah, pleased he could get a win if I couldn't. But yeah, just gonna have fun in the race I do. Maybe the next one I'll do is gonna be Spa in the F1 car.
Indeed. Once again, Henry, thank you so much for joining us over here on the broadcast. Good race over there in Road America. Sadly, not the best result, but hopefully things go well later on.
Cheers, guys.
That, that, ladies and gentlemen, was Henry Bennett finishing up in P2 at the end of the race. And now I believe Justin has yet another driver with us for another interview.
Yes, indeed. Coming away in fourth, working with his teammate was Joshua Wolf. First things first, Joshua, how are you feeling coming away with a top 5 run today, along with your teammate Dawson Brock?
I feel great after a disappointing Lamar weekend. This is definitely great to get back on track for points.
What was your team's strategy today? Because it seemed plenty of your cars elected to stick with one another. Essentially, you and Brock were sticking together like glue all race.
Yeah, we just worked really hard on this setup, and there wasn't really much of a strategy there. Like, yeah, we were saving fuel, but it wasn't a, hey, okay, you lead so many laps, and so that the person behind could save fuel. It was just kind of where we ended up qualifying and running, just what kept us together.
Overall, how difficult was this track for you and your team today, especially with some drivers slipping and sliding off the circuit at multiple times?
Um, it had its challenges. I was struggling at the beginning of the week and still made a few mistakes during the race, but I kind of figured out where I was having issues, and I think it was mainly me driving in too deep early on in the week and spinning out from that. So it wasn't too bad. I know some of the other guys kind of struggled a little bit more with just pace, but Dawson and I kind of were up there all week.
Next race in about a month or so goes on the dirt. You performed well last time the series was on dirt. How are you feeling about that track with the 410 sprints? It's the Knoxville Nationals.
We don't really run a whole lot of them, but it seems like anytime we end up there, we do have enough experience that we end up doing really well. So I'd expect several of us to do pretty well for that race. May not be challenging for the win, but at least have a decent day.
Real quick, anyone you want to thank for your run?
Just thank the guys at the Grizzly TFR team and our sponsors, TeamSpeak and Infinity Decals. On the Torque Freak side, we got a couple other sponsors that didn't make it on the car this week for Grizzly. Was Sim Speed Shop. So just want to thank them and thank all the guys on the team.
Congratulations to the top 5. Strong run.
Thank you.
That was Joshua Wolf coming home in P4. Let's check out how things are going to shake out after what was an eventful race. Real quick, want to discuss this with you, Sawmill. An eventful one with lots of strategy, and Valverde having the drive of the race, I think you could say, because in P3, much of the race was as far back as 6 seconds from the lead, but in the final 2 pit stops gained 3 seconds apiece to come away with the W.
Indeed, what a drive that was in the end by Wow Valverde. We had a word with him, and he was absolutely buzzing towards the end. Got everything done finally, and maximized his points with the win. Commanding drive that all the other drivers doing a good job as well, but that crash in the end, taking Bataska out and putting in the question about what could have been. In the end, though, it was a rather good race, and I'm pretty sure none of you watching in the broadcast would be disappointed. Certainly, me and Justin weren't.
With the bad luck for Eric Mickey, that points gap from before today's round likely to increase, to say the very least. It was just 41 points the difference entering today. Ross Banfield, the third place driver of the standings, came home in P6, while Kurt Crum rounded out the drivers on the lead lap today. So chances those points, Sawmill, are going to vastly change by the time we get back to the track in August.
Oh yes, things could just be completely blowing up in the air for this one. With the major series, we have so many drivers, as you can see on the screen, so close to each other, all with equal amounts of talents, that towards the end, trust me, this series is going to be so much fun to watch. More races yet to come, Justin. We take a look at the calendar. The Knoxville Nationals in August, the 2nd of August that is, then the Belgian Grand Prix, and all the other races following up through in September.
An eventful race today as you look at the rest of the calendar. First half of the season just about wrapped up, 8 rounds down, just 6 to go. But with that, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's action here from Road America for the European split for the Major Series and the top drivers in the pro side of things. We'd like to congratulate Yo Valverde on his second victory of the campaign and the rest of your podium of Henry Bennett and Dallas Pataska. We'll see you in August when the Knoxville Nationals go to the track. But for the rest of our crew, for Arjuna Katsipati, for Samuel Aurora, I'm Justin Prince, saying so long, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll see you in August.